Getting back to order, there's the microphones are working now. Let's take a minute here to get our streaming live, and we're streaming out to the thousands of people that are watching at home tonight. Okay, and I understand we have the thumbs up from the tower. We are good to go. Okay, we'll call the meeting, the regular meeting, the last regular meeting of this council to order. And the first thing on our agenda is always to adopt the agenda. Could I get a motion to do so, please? And I believe Councillor Flowers beat you to it, Councillor Reid.
Nice try. I would like to approve the agenda except for one change. I would like to move 6F, Truth and Reconciliation, up earlier on the agenda as we have numerous guests here today and in respect of their time. Could we change it?
Excellent idea, Councillor Flowers. So we'll move 6F to follow 4A. So we'll hear the delegation and then have our Truth and Reconciliation report. See, we have a large mass of orange t-shirts in the crowd. So,
thank you.
Okay, so the agenda has been amended to that. That's your motion. Any further debate on that? Don't see any. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the agenda as amended? That carries, so 6F will be after 4A. All right, adoption of the previous minutes for last. There you go, Councillor Reid. You're up early on that one.
I am. I have moved the adoption of the previous minutes as presented.
Okay, don't see any discussion. All those in favor of the minutes? Carries, thank you. And we'll move right into delegations. Our first delegation, come on down, come on in. Yep, whichever. Both doors work. And I understand you can hear us outside now? Good, okay. Thank you, Jaylene, for all the technical work behind the scenes to pull this off. Come right up to the microphone. It's the Cochrane Track and Field Association is joining us tonight as a delegation. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to back this presentation up. Firstly, I wanted to thank you guys for taking the time today to meet with us and our group. My name is Tommy Knitter, and I'm speaking on behalf of our group, which is the CTFA, who has worked tirelessly for the last year to bring this project to fruition. I'm fortunate enough to have grown up in this town, to coach amateur athletics in this community, and to be able to teach in this community. Again, thank you to all of you individuals for this meeting and for taking the time to give me, my group, advice. Really appreciate it. Here is our agenda for this evening. We're going to go through our ask, the updates since our last presentation, our current design. We're going to review project impacts. We're going to speak about partners and stakeholders. We're going to review project funding. We're going to talk about our fundraising initiative. We're going to review our letters of support, and we're going to conclude with questions. Our ask. We are asking for a letter of commitment which is highlighting council support of the project and a monetary commitment of $600,000 from the capital budget 2022. Municipal government grants may be included as a source of this funding. We require this letter of commitment by Tuesday, September 21st. Now, throughout our last year of involvement in this project, we have spent countless hours and been involved in countless meetings, and we've unfortunately reached the end of what we've been able to do. We have been unsuccessful in applying for 3 large grants over the project, with the general feedback being we cannot successfully pursue these grants without a financial commitment from the town of Cochrane. We are unable to attain additional firm corporate sponsorships as our potential corporate sponsors have an expectation that the town of Cochrane, the benefactors of this project, support it financially. Lastly, when we presented to Rocky View County, we were met with support of the project, but the message was very clear from Rocky View County. They cannot financially support this project unless the town of Cochrane does. For those reasons, we are unable to move forward with this project unless we receive this written commitment. Since the last time I spoke to you guys, we've had multiple meetings with both of our design teams as well as Rocky View Schools. We've completed a land and geotechnical survey on our field, ensuring the sizing, placement, and conditions are met. We've added 4 new experienced board members and 12 approved governance policies. Our business plan is currently being finalized, and D&O insurance is in place. We've gathered more support from field users, which includes local football programs, rugby programs, soccer, ultimate frisbee, field hockey, as well as neighbors and the schools in the area. We've begun many initial discussions with corporate donors, subject to a commitment from the town of Cochrane. Here's our current design. As you can see, we have our artificial turf in place at the tri-school site. This $2.4 million project includes the installment of an artificial turf with uprights, a score clock, as well as field lights. Our timeline on this project. After this evening's meeting, we have a RVS, Rocky View Schools Trustees meeting on the 23rd of September, where they will approve the final budget and final design of this project. We have an upcoming meeting on October 1st with Rocky View County, where we are seeking $600,000 in a financial commitment. If we are successful in those meetings, construction on this project will begin at the end of June 2022, and the project will be completed in September 2022. The first time that we met, we spent a lot of time going over how this project is going to impact our community. We have over 2,000 students that call the tri-school site their home. We are at a point where we are running out of space to develop physical literacy skills. At Cochrane High School, we often have to teach physical education class in classrooms. We have 1 gymnasium. At Manitowoc, they're often using the bus parking lot to develop physical literacy skills. Building an artificial turf field will give students access to a facility that we can develop those skills. Not only is this going to benefit the students that call the tri-school site their home, this is also going to be a huge benefit for community athletes. We've received letters of support from multiple user groups that are looking for a facility to call their home. This is a great space to develop mental and physical wellness in a time where we are fatigued from COVID-19. We saw this weekend, Friday night, a football game at Spray Lakes Legacy Field, which hosted 1,000 fans. This community is ready for a facility that is going to be the home for multiple athletic user groups. And our last point, we've become aware of this Horse Creek project And through that, we understand that there's a community need for these facilities. We believe that we are an excellent segue to the Horse Creek project because we can meet some of the needs for this project within 1 year. As we review our partners and stakeholders, the point that really separates our project is the $1.2 million commitment that we have already received from a gracious alumni donor. Before this $1.2 million commitment, this alumni has already financed over $500,000 worth of enhancements to our community. This is a relationship that we want to continue to foster, and we want to show our community that we are open for alumni sponsorships. We have a partnership with Rocky View Schools. Rocky View Schools is the landowner. They are also taking on the operations and maintenance cost of this facility. When we talk about community users, we're going to benefit the 2,000 plus students on the tri-school site during school hours. After school hours, this becomes a community facility that benefits community athletic groups, the town of Cochrane, and Rocky View County residents. And lastly, we are seeking a strong partnership today with the town of Cochrane government. We are at a point where we need a commitment from the town of Cochrane in order to continue to make this dream a reality. After this meeting, on October 1st, we will be meeting with Rocky View County to ask for an additional $600,000. So, our current funding for this project. We have $1.2 million through an alumni donation. We are here asking for a commitment of $600,000 from the town of Cochrane. On October 1st, we are asking for $600,000 commitment from Rocky View County. This total cost of $2.4 million includes the installation of artificial turf with lights, score clock, and uprights. This meets the need not only of the tri-school members, but community user groups as well. On top of seeking this support from the town of Cochrane and Rocky View County, our fundraising initiatives are as followed. This is the current score clock at Cochrane High School. One of the things that Shoaldice Athletic Park in the city had success with was having a corporate sponsorship for the score clock. One of the fundraising initiatives that was used at Spray Lake's Legacy Fields was taking rows of bleachers and selling off individual rows to small businesses and family members in the community. We are also seeking a donation in kind for materials such as gravel or trucking. One of the last fundraising initiatives we've talked about is the lighting company Musco Lights actually donated the materials and installation for Spray Lake's Legacy Field. These are all things we are waiting to jump on pending today's meeting. A quick review of the letters of support that we've received. We have letters of support from all 3 of the schools in our area. We have received letters of support from community athletic user groups. We have in total over 30 letters of support, and we're very thankful to those groups and associations that have supported us. Again, we are here today to ask for a financial commitment of $600,000 from the town of Cochrane. We understand that this is the last meeting before an election, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with us today and for consideration. We want to make this happen. This is a $2.4 million facility that would impact many people in this community, and we're asking for a $600,000 commitment from the town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Knitter. You were very clear. Very clear. I just want to go over the process before we get into questions. So we do have an agenda item, 6E, under business later in the agenda, where we will actually discuss the formal request that you're putting towards us or forward tonight. So we're not going to get into the debate at this point about whether we think this is a good initiative or not, but we'll get into it tonight, but not during delegation time, just so everyone's clear. So with that, you were very clear, and one of my first questions was, I think answered 18 times in your presentation, was this is a shift from the last time you were here from a school asset to a community asset. And that was rhetorical. You said it 18 times. So
Okay.
Let's get into the question period here. Councillor Federico, you're up first.
Thank you for the information. A quick question. I know that you're going to Rocky View County for a request of the same amount of money. What happens if Rocky View County decides that they're out? How do you come up with that other $600,000 that's on the table right now?
Thank you for your question. Firstly, we are going into the situation preparing that we are going to have success with Rocky View County just based on preliminary conversations. But with that being said, we are prepared that they might not be able to support for $600,000. We are still confident that if we get a commitment from the town of Cochrane, that opens up so many avenues of funding, whether it's corporate sponsorship, donation in kind, or grant writing, that we will be able to secure the funds needed to complete this project.
And one more quick question. You talked about your fundraiser initiatives, but I would say those are more sponsorship initiatives than I would say they're fundraising. Do you have any fundraisers actually planned, not just, obviously businesses or corporate people donating to buy bleachers or things like that, but an actual true boots on the ground fundraiser?
Absolutely, we do. And again, we are going to follow in the footsteps of what the Cochrane Lions Association was successful with in funding the Spray Lakes Legacy field. We are in a position where we are currently developing our understanding of what we can do because we are staff members of Rocky View Schools. So that is an ongoing development. But yes, one of the things that Cochrane Lions was successful in doing was hosting a night where there was things like raffle items, Calgary Stampeders out supporting, and a silent auction. We are hoping to include that, but again, that's one of the things that we're hoping to establish what we can and cannot do with Rocky View Schools.
Perfect. Thank you for the information.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, I just want to begin by saying great presentation. It was very clear, as the mayor has pointed out. And I'm glad that you repeated your points several times. My question was twofold. One was, did I understand you to say that Rocky View School District will be responsible for the maintenance of the ongoing of this project?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and then are they also responsible for the bookings and the off hours, or how will that work?
So we are going to be mirroring the commitment that is in place for Spray Lakes Legacy Field, which is during school hours, primary access is given to schools. After school hours, the booking is going to be handled by Rocky View Schools. So with that being said, one of the benefits of that is we are not going to be able to give preferential booking to any one particular user group.
Okay, great, thank you. A good presentation.
Councillor Nagel?
Thank you very much for your presentation and your work on this, Mr. Knitter. Councillor Reid literally asked the two questions that I had in mind. So I guess I just wanted to thank you because I was already queued up to talk anyways. So yeah, I'll save my comments on the $600,000 until the appropriate part of the agenda. But thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nagel. Councillor McFadden?
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. I did want just some clarity on a couple items. I think your presentation has shifted slightly. When it was first presented and talked to the community, it was really feeling like it was a festival site. But what I'm sensing, and correct me if I got this wrong, but this has moved to being towards more of a field enhancement dedicated towards a school as opposed to a festival site within the community. Is that a correct interpretation of the change in the plans?
Yeah, I would just say through our meetings with local community members as well as feedback through our website, the feedback was loud and clear that the individuals that lived on the hill were not wanting something that's going to disturb their livelihood. So our current project, we've dropped the 8-lane track, we've reduced what this facility is. We are looking at really bringing back Cochrane High School athletics to this facility during school hours and giving a place for community user groups to come play and train outside of school hours.
Okay, so it's reduced in scope to something that's perhaps more, fits in with the current use, more so than the initial concept that was talked about. And then, and just to be clear, so the site though, as much as, and I appreciate that, and the more we can get of that, where the community is opening up and sharing recreation space is important, but the field itself will be owned by a Rockview School Board, that's correct, at the end of the day?
Correct.
Okay, and at this point though, we don't yet have an endorsement from the Rockview School Board, that's happening next week or 2 weeks out?
The 23rd of September.
Okay.
We do have support from written support from Rockview Schools. This is just the vote on the final design and budget of the facility. Keep in mind that Rockview Schools, because they are taking on the operations and maintenance cost, they need to be very in tune with the budget.
Okay, so at this point though, it's fair to say that the Rockview School Board supports this project as designed?
We have written approval, yes.
Okay, perfect. And then one of the things I think is very important in our community is the multi-use aspect. I think you said you have a letter of support from the, what we see often is the fields can be used for many things, but rugby in particular has special requirements. This field is going to be built with the proper or the required buffers to allow rugby to be played at a competitive level?
So, as we discussed previously in our meetings, if we look at the Spray Lakes Legacy Field as designed, it does not include a shock pad. That field design is certifiable for AS2A, which is Alberta sports, so high school rugby, but it is not supported for Rugby Canada. It's not insured through Rugby Canada. So, a few things to consider. The price of this shock pad is about $200,000. So, that is something that we are going to have written approval from Rocky View Schools to take on, because that is part of their asset. And we have an ongoing discussion where we are seeking a partnership with Bow Valley Rugby Club.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so that provides some clarity for my questions, and I really appreciate it. And certainly I appreciate all of the passion and the work that your group has put into that. And I know everybody's been back at school for a week or so, so thank you very much for that. And good luck with the rest of the school year on a side note. So I look forward to the rest of our conversations. But thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. 3 questions that we haven't come to yet. Tom, and thanks for the presentation. I was wondering what the probability in your estimation of actually needing the full $600,000 was. I know that it's a commitment for it, but there could be additional funding, grants, scholarships, things that we're looking into. What's your expectation after if we go forward?
So a few things on that. First thing, our budget, we have left a contingency in our budget in case of fluctuations in currency or of commodities. So our budget may be reduced. In terms of funding, we believe that we are going to have a lot of success seeking corporate sponsorship, as well as grant writing, if we are able to receive a written commitment from the town of Cochrane. So I don't know if I can give you a percentage, but we are very, very confident that if we have a written support from the town of Cochrane, that we are going to be able to pursue these grant opportunities as well as corporate sponsorship, as well as our own fundraising initiatives.
Great, thank you. I was hoping you could elaborate on why it's so time sensitive. Obviously, you feel that we need answers immediately. There was September 21st and 23rd dates. I was just hoping you could elaborate on why tonight is so critical.
Absolutely, thank you. So first thing on that, our alumni donor. He's been involved in this project for almost 3 years, and it's something that had failed previously. He wants to ensure that this project can get done. So that would be our first reason. We don't want this donorship. We don't want to lose the opportunity for this donorship. The second reason is, I believe this is the second time I've spoken to the council. We've also spoken to committees as well as individuals that are here. We don't want to lose all of the progress that we've made and start with a new group of individuals or a different group of individuals moving forward. And lastly, our Rocky View schools, this is something that, again, was surfaced a few years ago. We have worked tirelessly to ensure that Rocky View Schools is on board and a partnership involved. They are also undergoing an election. We are hoping to have their approval on the budget and the final design as of September 23rd. And the last point I would sort of say is it's time sensitive because we cannot secure any additional funds at this time without written support from the town of Cochrane.
Understood, thank you. Would you anticipate that if we don't go through tonight that this project would be dead in the tracks, or is there a chance we would see this again upcoming? Or?
This project will be dead in the tracks if we do not receive approval tonight.
And then just finally, if I could, AstroTurf, I'm not completely sure on, obviously it'll be an upgrade to the current field. Could you just talk about what that allows you to do, the AstroTurf upgrading of the field? What were we looking to accomplish? Obviously hosting larger football events would be something. I was surprised to see that the running track was gone, so just a little bit more about what the final project will allow. Thank you.
Absolutely. So yeah, the artificial turf, I would say the biggest thing that it's going to do for the community is provide amount of time for access. Usually as a high school teacher, as soon as the first snow comes in, we lose access to our facility, which is the field behind, that's between Manitowoc and Cochrane High School. That's when we kind of get into situations where we are splitting Spray Lakes Legacy Field with Bow Valley, as well as the other football and community user groups that use that facility. Our PE classes are going inside. With a facility like that, we're anticipating 7 times the usage. And a lot of that is due to weather. When you can use the facility, you can use it in rain, in snow. A lot of fields, like I know the local soccer fields really protect their fields if it's raining, just because if you participate in a sport like rugby or soccer on a wet field, you're going to rip up the grass and make it a mud pit. But yeah.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I appreciate what your group's doing. Regardless of the outcome, I know it takes a lot of work just to bring something this far along, so thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor McFadden, you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to clarify the Rocky View School Board situation. So at this point, the school board is supporting the design and the project in principle, but at this point, there's no financial support from the school board for the project. Have they agreed to take over the operations, or that's part of the next step of discussions?
So the last time that we spoke with Board of Trustee members from Rockview Schools was in June of 2021, where we presented our final design and budget. We have an agreement in principle for operations and maintenance, we have an agreement in principle. They are finalizing, they have to vote and approve the budget and the final design.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. A couple questions that haven't been asked that I will put on the floor. And maybe just to drill in a little deeper on what Councillor Wilson was going on about the donor. And you answered pretty clearly again. I appreciate your clearness tonight, your clarity. the risk of losing the donor. So if you're not successful in garnering at least the letter of agreement tonight, then this project is dead.
Completely.
Yeah, okay. The other one was around the community facility, and you've spoken, I think many of my colleagues have talked about access and who's utilizing the turf and when. Would the group be amenable to an access agreement with the town? Obviously, this is a little bit different situation than what I think it's been done in the past, but this would be, and you've answered that this would be a Rocky School Division asset, booked and maintained by Rocky Schools, but as a contribution from the town of Cochrane, there would be an expectation of community use, which you've outlined with rugby and soccer and all of the letters of support you have. But is there a guarantee to the community that it would be accessible to those groups?
Thank you for your question. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And that's all the questions I have. Everything else has been covered. Oh, sorry, Councillor Nagel, you have one more?
Yeah, just following up on something that's already been talked about, can you please explain to us why exactly the project would be dead if there's no commitment made today? Sorry, I won't say any more. Can you just explain more?
Our alumni donor has stated that this is something that he has been trying to do for the last 3 years and has been unable to do so. He's continuously made the comment that it has been very difficult to give a $1.2 million donation. He has made it abundantly clear to our group that if we are unsuccessful this evening, and if we are unsuccessful building this facility at the end of June 2022, that he is going to remove his funding for this project. And on top of that, he is someone, like I said, he's put in over $500,000 into community enhancement already. He's made a $1.2 million commitment, and we've had conversations about what the future might hold if we are successful this evening and moving forward. And I truly believe that this is a relationship that we want to continue to grow and continue to foster. But he has made it very clear that his involvement is coming to an end if we are unsuccessful.
Yeah, sorry, I just don't understand why someone would be involved for 3 years and then not be able to wait 5 weeks for an election to end. It just, to be honest, feels like we're being strong-armed into spending money.
I apologize if that's the message that I'm conveying. I think, again, I can't fully speak for our alumni donor, but this is a project that he has tried to accomplish, and he's been unsuccessful in accomplishing it. One of the other facilities that he's involved with is in the private sector, and the ability and the ease of what he can do in the private sector has really sort of put us in a position where we've got educators who have a full-time job, a chartered accountant, and we're spending our dwindling hours chasing something that we're not sure can be a reality. So if I'm giving the impression that our alumni donor, I think he's just in a situation where it's easier for him to move on than to continue if we are unsuccessful. That being said, he has the right to change his mind, and he has the right to make up his own decision, but we just want to be clear that we cannot move forward without a commitment from the town of Cochrane.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Padeco?
Just to clarify that, even if we give, obviously a letter of commitment, that this still comes back for discussion in the budget of 2022 for consideration, correct?
That's what's on our agenda later,
Okay.
that very discussion, yeah.
So then it would either be, we're going to agree that it's either in the budget for sure, not as in consideration.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've exhausted the questioning. Again, thank you for your presentation and your clarity, your request tonight. I guess, again, for me, the shift, I think, and I think maybe where Councillor Nagel and Wilson and I are speaking about the clarity of the risk of losing the donor, I think is less, and I've met with the donor and yourself, and again, I don't want to speak on behalf of that person either, but what he conveyed to me was not so much an election issue as it was a frustration with the process in trying to get $1.2 million to a facility that he saw no commitment from the town of Cochrane, which I think we were a little bit confused with your first presentation saying, are you in favor of this project moving forward? And we all agreed at that time that we were, but we were not clear that you were looking for a financial commitment at that time. And which I tongue-in-cheek said tonight, you're very clear on, you're asking for $600,000 from the town tonight. Okay, but just to fill in a little bit of that donor conversation, but he was clear about moving on from this project if there was not a commitment from the town.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for your presentation tonight and all the work you're doing on behalf of this project. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. You're more than welcome to sit and wait till the end if you want. No. Or you can go home and watch the streaming. Okay. All right, next we have
Respectfully,
6.
Mr. Mayor, can we
Yes.
get a motion?
Oh,
to-
yes, of course.
Thank
All
you.
these breaks of summer, I've forgotten our procedural bylaw requires us to make a motion. Councillor Reid,
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we accept the presentation for information.
excellent. Now we're procedurally accurate. All those in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Next up, we have a delegation, or sorry, not a delegation, a report. And it's 6F. Mr. Derricott, you're making a move to the podium.
Good evening, Council. It's my privilege to, in a moment, present a report on the truth and reconciliation efforts of the town of Cochrane. But prior to that, I understand we have a few representatives from our Indigenous community that would like to speak to Council, so I would invite them up.
Thank you. We need you to use the microphone so everyone at home can hear you too.
Oh, okay. Osium Amboa Stitch. My name is Ken Levi. I'm the husband of Gloria Stowe, and she's asked me with respect and humbleness to say a few words about our presentation. My wife here, first of all, my name is Minnie Tonga Sigtuja Siwo. My wife's spiritual name is Wotoa Wia. And she's the daughter of Chief Dr. Reverend Dr. Chief John Snow, who's hereditary chief and chief of the treaty signers in her traditional territory here of the Stoney Nakoda people, which we refer to as the Yarhaid Nakoda. My wife has been a cultural ambassador for most of her life. She's a 3-time princess, Nakota princess, Stampede princess, and Miss Indian World. And we like to, she and with this reconciliation journey with our relatives that we've made in this process of you good people and the staffs. My wife's going to present you the two gifts, and in the Sioux traditions, there's 4 sacred medicines that were given by the White Buffalo Calf woman, and this is 2 of them, the sweetgrass. And the sweetgrass represents the commitments that the Creator gave to the people. It also represents, it has 7 strands. The 7 strands are the 7 sacred teachings that we carry in our 3 levels of our human being, our body, mind, and our spirit. So that's what that represents. The tobacco, again, is the sacred medicine used to talk to the Creator. And we offer that to you in a spirit of reconciliation, a spirit of kindness, the spirit of welcoming and respect, to continue this journey that we've started here, and to honor the work that has been done by your staff and your leadership. It's been very heartwarming for me and my wife to see this work, that this different, the new day, I guess what we call it, because it's 2020, 21, and we're wearing this orange shirt. An orange shirt represents those old ideas going away. And we step forward as new modern people. We step forward as brothers and sisters, as friends. And then we work together. And the work that was done on the report was a collaboration of your staff, of inputs, of my wife. So we present to you these sacred medicines to show the sacredness of the work that has been done, and to honor that commitment to work forward in a good way, in a good manner. With humbleness and respect, I offer you my wife here to say a few words.
Esteemed council, your worship, and all individuals here tonight, we are from Stoney, Dakota, and extending protocol is one thing that we do. When we came into the site, we did a smudge, which is our sacred ceremonies that we do for the beginning of purifying and making things sacred for ourselves. So as we came in, the orange shirt wearers, this is our homage. This is our journey of reconciliation. As we come closer to Truth and Reconciliation Day, Orange Shirt Day, the month of September is observing that, observing the TRC commitments, observing UNDRIP, observing important legislation and things that are coming in terms of reconciliation of action and works. So when we present the tobacco, we present the sweetgrass, it's solidifying and building relationship. It's extending that to similar in the way that when the treaty process began, the groups would gather, the First Nations, the headmen, the government, church leaders would all gather to be part of this process. And so I feel that the same mandate happens here. As we go in a good way, we extend protocol and gifts exchanged on both sides. But just a short little teaching that my husband gave on what our intention is here as we present the report tonight on reconciliation. We journey forth in a good way. We have the intention of the smudge and the smoke. We would start with ceremony. So in some small way, we have started that process. And so we present this to your worship on behalf of the council, and this is the gift. So, yeah. You would shake hands, but we kind of COVID. Your elbows.
Thank you. Thank you so much. not sure I can follow up that presentation. I do appreciate your words tonight, and as we accept this report, the words that you shared really ring true with me, I'm sure with everyone, that solidifying and extending relationships, it's not our first exchange of gifts or meetings, but I do share the sentiment that this is a new day and that we have an opportunity before us to continue to build those and strengthen those relationships. So thank you so much for being here tonight and for bestowing this on us. It means a lot. Thank you. Mr. Derricott, the report now, I guess it feels...
Thank you. I think I would just maybe briefly echo a part of the mayor's comments. I felt a mite inadequate in presenting this tonight, and I felt initially as those words were shared with us just previously that my inadequacy was growing, but by the end I felt courage to participate in this important journey, and we also felt it was critically important as an organization that myself as a senior official return this report to council and to indicate our continued and growing commitment to participate in truth and reconciliation and learn more about all that means for us as an organization and as a community, and I hope also as individuals. So I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to bring that forward. I won't go through the entire report in detail. I will note a few pieces that I feel are important to highlight, and then we'll be very happy to engage in some dialogue with council following that. This is, as the mayor mentioned, not the beginning of the effort of truth and reconciliation by the town. There has been formal and informal efforts that have gone on before, but this report is as a result of council requesting information on how we as an organization can more fully and better engage the work of truth and reconciliation, which in and of itself for me is the critical component, is the willingness to learn and understand and grow as an organization so that we can better fulfill our space that is so critical to this work. This report is buoyed up by significant efforts of, I think as council would be familiar with the work taken on largely by our Equity and Inclusion Committee in building relationships with our local Indigenous people, and will at times reference the important and meaningful work they've done, and hope that it will be aspirational for us as we build on that and go forward. As I was reviewing this report, I found myself to be a little bit surprised to see that the original, or the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission originally came out in 2008, which it seems like a long time ago in some ways, and in others not. And I think we've seen and experienced in our many interactions with the community and other places that the work of truth and reconciliation is beginning to bear fruit and beginning to manifest itself in very real ways. I don't think there's anyone who wouldn't share my view that we still have a lot of work to do and a lot of opportunities as people in this community to grow together. But this work has been ongoing and started quite some time ago. I think it's also worth noting that there is a very local context to this and a very real element in our community, not the least of which is more than 1,000 Indigenous people who identify as Indigenous calling Cochrane home. We suspect now that is a 2016 census number, that it's likely significantly greater than that, as well as the 4,000 plus Indigenous people that live as our neighbors and share this region with us in the Stoney Nakoda nation. And so we can see this is present in our schools, in our community, in our business, that this isn't far from us, it's close to us, and so I think that's an important piece to note there. One of the things that I think stood out, it's hard for it not to stand out, it's bolded in the report in some of the interactions with the Indigenous people, is this reflection that they don't see themselves necessarily represented in the community of Cochrane, and I think that's really a sobering thought for us as community leaders to think about how we can change that and ensure that that is that is part of the past and not part of the new day that was described. We also know that there is a growing number of resources available and in our municipal context, some coming directly from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, others coming through other municipalities who are working and leading some of this work. Organizations such as AUMA have granted and allowed for this work to grow and continue. So that work that we have been doing and are doing is informed by that as well. So all of that brings us to now, where is the town of Cochrane in Truth and Reconciliation? And again, I will defer to the report here and highlight simply that the great work that has been done has been significantly limited by the capacity we have to engage that work, to meaningfully grow the relationships, to build programs and services that will support truth and reconciliation. And the heart of the report is that if council wishes to see that work grow in a meaningful way, that additional resourcing would be the recommendation of administration. What does that mean? To simplify for me, is it's got to move off to the off the side of desks to be someone's desk completely if we really want to see this work take the step forward that I think would be most appropriate. This work takes time and effort, which has been given so graciously off the sides of people's desks, and I certainly don't want to diminish that work, and I, in fact, hope to honor it by sharing that view going forward. There is a list, again, I won't go through it in detail, of what does it look like to have an additional resource undertaking some activities in truth and reconciliation. And I think it speaks for itself as to there's many activities and learnings and opportunities that are available to us, but we need someone who can be tasked with connecting us as an organization with the resources and communities that can help this work progress. The town of Cochrane has certainly, I think, seen a pretty direct manifestation of this work. There's been a number of opportunities for staff. I think council was also issued the opportunities to participate in some learnings that are a part of that. I'm pleased to have the town of Cochrane be one of the first municipalities to formally recognize September 30th as a holiday for us in our organization, which one of the things that I think is really important for the work of truth and reconciliation is giving space to it. And that is our intent at an organizational level, is to create space where more of this work can be done. And so the goodwill is there. I think we have made progress, which is encouraging, but we continue to be constrained and limited. And if council wishes, in their wisdom, to see that work grow, that there is additional resources required to change that outcome in a significant way. I think I'll stop there, and I would be happy to take any questions from council.
Thank you, Mr. Derricott, for the report. One thing I would add is, again, it's a journey that we've been on for some time, but I think to your point, we're starting to learn obviously more and really, what's the word, lean into it more in a dedicated, intentional fashion. So that's good to see, and I think the community has responded well as well, but I think outside of the report, one thing I would ask is that we, whatever the council of the day is, that it doesn't have to be just this. There can be, obviously I think this is super important and there's a lot in here to digest and it's a great direction. And council will get into the questions on the report, but things such as, and we talked about this, I think a few times, yourself and I, about inviting our Indigenous community to partake in our inaugural meeting as council. I think that the ceremonial value in that is high. It's something we can do without a direction or an added resource. The continued work by council and senior administration to continue to engage Stoney Nakoda. We have an inter-community, intermunicipal, in this case it's different, but we have intermunicipal committees with Rocky View. You know, we have our CMRB, we have other ways of engaging neighbors, but we don't have a formal Stoney Nakoda, Cochrane inter-community committee. And I think that those are things that we should be pursuing as well, in addition to the outlined reportings tonight.
Yeah.
So I think that's ongoing work, whoever's around this table.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate those comments, and truth and reconciliation is and is a responsibility we have regardless of the outcomes of some of those discussions or deliberations, and we will remain committed to engaging those as best as we possibly can, independent of the outcomes.
Yeah.
We felt it was important that council know both that is a commitment that is going to remain, and that there are opportunities to consider a different way forward. I would also add, and I don't want to suggest or devalue the specifics of the Truth and Reconciliation, but I know that this council has discussed at length many times the creation of what is referred to as a diverse and inclusive community, and this would just be a significant piece of, I think, building on that work and that commitment that has been made so far.
Excellent. Okay. Councillor McFadden, your light's on first. You're up.
Excellent, thank you very much. Yeah, certainly I'd like to start off by, well, I guess before we move to the recommended action, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and for coming and speaking to us and sharing the ceremony. I appreciate that. And it's great to see that we are taking steps towards this. And of course, I think it's great that Cochrane has been able to step up and recognize September 30th and dedicate that day to focusing on this relationship and awareness. So that, and I'm very proud to see that. With this report though, I mean, and I do appreciate you had highlighted that there's work to do, but if we want to advance that work, we need to, if it's going to become more than just words and turn into action, for the municipal standpoint, that means putting money where our mouth is, I guess. So I think that would be part of the recommended action that I would like to add, is that not only do we accept the report as information, but also request that administration build a proposed resources into the 2022 budget for council deliberations. The other question I have is, I know a lot of municipalities have done it for a long time. Cochrane, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't yet developed this, but was it part of this work to develop a land acknowledgement? Was that done as part of this work, and are we looking at incorporating that into how we do our daily work?
Yes, thank you, Councillor McFadden, through the chair. Yes, there has been, I think, quite a bit of work in the land acknowledgement process. I think there's still a little ways to go in terms of the formal adoption of that. And as listed in the potential actions, that is one that I think we would be pursuing, again, independent of a change in resourcing. I think what we would see in respect to the resourcing is specifically how much we can do, how quickly, not what we would like to do and what the principles are. And so I think that list is something we would like to do regardless of a change in resource. And as the mayor suggested, there will be a few items that we intend to pursue that are fairly independent of this decision. It just increases and enhances our ability to engage some of those in a more timely manner. It would be remiss of me to take any credit whatsoever for the actual construction of this report. I hope that wasn't unclear at all. I did not do the work here. I think about the hard work that Melissa did well with us and with the Equity and Inclusion Committee, and if this is the outcomes that we can get with just a small dedication there, I could just only imagine what would be possible if we had a more formal dedication to that. So certainly your motion is welcomed by administration.
Okay, and then I did want to follow up and support the mayor's point, and then how we work together as friends and neighbors to do that, but to develop a formal, or maybe not a formal, but a dedicated way of having an ongoing relationship. I know in my time on council, it takes two to tango, and sometimes the Stoney Nakoda people step up to start that relationship, and sometimes we do, but not too often are we on the same dance floor at the same time. So I'm mixing metaphors all over the place, but it would be great if we can, dedicate resources, time, and commitment to kind of ensuring that we're engaging on a regular basis. So I like where we're starting from with this. I'm glad that this is one of the updates we're getting at the end of our term. But yeah, I would amend the motion that council accept the report as information and direct administration to provide resources for debate in the 22 budget.
Good. Thank you. And if I just may add a comment to that, we really see, again, not to oversimplify this, but there's kind of three significant elements to this work. One of that is how we present this work in the community and how we connect the community to this work, and what is our role as community leaders there. Then there's the internal organizational work we have to do to understand truth and reconciliation and make sure that we are an organization that is responsive to that part of our Canadian history. And then there's the intergovernmental connection, which is how do we interact with them as a partner government. And so we are already working to create capacity in other spaces, and particularly the intergovernmental relations space, to ensure that work can get more attention from us and the appropriate amount of attention so that we can continue those to build those relationships.
No need to amend the motion. You made a motion.
Perfect, it's brilliant.
Councillor Flowers.
Thank you for this very important report and very heartfelt way that you put it across. I made some notes just as I was reviewing that I'd like to just point out. Yes, there's been some work done and we sure have a lot left to do. The line that did strike me was that we don't see ourselves in this community, and that was really hard to take. So we really need to change that and make sure that this work is a priority. The report outlines how training for staff is one of the most impactful ways that municipalities can support reconciliation. And I think we've got a great start on this. There's been quite a bit of work done, so we need to continue it and increase it and keep that going. The other line in the report that jumped out at me is we can invest in building relationships or react. And I think Canada has been great at reacting for a long time, and so I believe it's time for Cochrane to be proactive and go beyond the lip service. We need to show respect, and I know that respect is a strong value for the Indigenous people. It's something we all need to learn, and more training around respect for our fellow human beings would be an asset. And thank you to Gloria Snow for being here today. I know that she's an Indigenous advisor and has worked a lot with Melissa on all the programs that have taken place and given us good consultation. So thanks, a shout out to Melissa and Gloria. Thank you. I know that they're also working on a toolkit of truth and reconciliation, so I'm anxious to learn more about that. And the Equity and Inclusion Committee, I know it's a starting place for some of this work, but not enough to increase the workload, and there's not enough resources there. We do need the infrastructure in place to facilitate all this work. So I was also going to put forward a couple of motions, but Tara pretty much covered the one that I was looking at to build into the 2022 draft budget the funds for an Indigenous support worker and related expenses. I wonder if I could just tag on to yours. add those words. Thank you. And the other one was to direct administration to develop a working committee that includes collaboration from the beginning with Indigenous community members. So I'm anxious to hear from others on council, but thank you all for being here today and all the important work.
Thank you, Councillor Flowers. And just to be clear, we have one motion on the floor so far, and you want to hear from us about the committee idea? Is it- Yeah, well, we'll deal with the first one, and we can deal with that one second. Councillor Nagel?
Yeah, I'm really glad we're having this conversation today, and thank you to everyone in the gallery who has joined us this evening. A question I have is about the Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th. Can you give me a bit more information about what we can be doing to actually observe that holiday? Is there something we can be doing out in the public that we could support, you know, the way we do with Canada Day or Light Up?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Nagel. So the spirit or the reverence in which we're trying to approach September 30th and what is inspiring our internal conversations organizationally is to treat that day similar to Remembrance Day, which is not just another holiday. It's something that should be connected to reflection and understanding. And so in conjunction with that, as I mentioned before, we feel that creating the space for people to engage in that is really important. But for a lot of people, where to begin the work of their own personal truth and reconciliation journeys can be tough. And so at minimum, we will be producing what I would describe as a resource list that will be shared both internally with all staff, where they'll be encouraged to seek that out, as well as one that will be shared out with the public as to things that they can participate in, activities they can consider. And I'm sure that resource list hopefully will only grow over the years as this new day becomes more familiar to us. It's in the initial stages, while the town is not prepared to, we feel, to formally organize an event or anything like that, we would be so pleased to facilitate and support other groups similar to the way we do in Remembrance Day to appropriately provide opportunities for members of our community to learn about, like I said, that part of our Canadian history and how that can help us move forward.
Okay, great. I think it's great to hear that. Is my mic giving feedback? I think it's great to hear that the approach, like Remembrance Day, would be kind of the goal. My fear with a holiday like this is it would just be something like become like Labor Day or Family Day, where the purpose is forgotten and lost, and it just becomes another day off. So I think it'd be a great opportunity to make sure we're focusing on reflection and education and information for the community. So thanks.
We'll do our best to point people in the right direction.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nagel. Councillor Badeko.
Thank you for extending the olive branch from your community to ours. I think it's a good first start or a good first step and a start in rebuilding a relationship and a partnership as we go forward. I support many of the things, some of the motions that have come forward, but I think it becomes a bigger context to me than just hiring maybe an Indigenous support worker. I think that when I look at equity and inclusion, and we've only really had one body kind of doing all that work, and I agree with Mr. Derricott, it's always kind of on the side of somebody's desk, it falls off. I think that this needs to be revamped into something that's a much bigger picture. Not only does it talk about rebuilding relationships with our Indigenous community, but creating an inclusive and diverse community for all of our groups out there who feel marginalized. And so I think that's a much bigger topic to me than just talking about one-off. I would like to look at what this looks like departmentally and how we can conquer many of the issues that we brought forward with this council. And I do agree with creating some sort of like task force. I mean, I know that the mayor has talked about that many times, about how we can get involved on our side, but take some of that pressure off of staff as well, right? So I would like to see both of those things brought forward for discussion in the budget going forward. I think it's important work that we can no longer ignore on a variety of levels, not just on this one, but on all of them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Badeko. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. I think differently about this than a lot that I'm hearing around the table, and so I thought I'd better weigh in. I made some notes as I was listening to the presentation. I really appreciate everyone being here, and I appreciate the sentiment of what we're hearing. What's bothering me is some of the recommendations in the report, which I think are from AUMA, if I read it correctly. And that's it. I just wrote some notes here, but I appreciate the spirit and I assume the intent of the efforts in the presentation, but I disagree with the policy proposed. I do not support an equity and inclusion position or a similar policy document at the town of Cochrane or any municipality. I worry that we're fanning the flames of identity politics here and moving away from our Western liberal society's bedrock principles of individuality. And a quote came to mind as I read this. It's from my favorite economist. He says, "There's all the difference in the world between equality of opportunity and equality of outcomes." And I worry that when we push for equity and inclusion positions and policies and some of the things in the document, we're moving away from equality of opportunity and towards setting outcomes. The first is personal liberty, the latter is oppression to me, I feel like. So what I'm principally worried about is I'm happy to engage in any of the report's recommendations personally, but I'm very, very fearful of mandating internal training programs or spending taxpayer funds on creating positions. So I thought I'd better at least put out there that I have a different way of thinking about some of the ways we're approaching this, and I guess hopefully hear what our motion is one more time from Councillor McFadden, because it wasn't clear what we're doing today.
Actually have a motion from administration that might clarify what I think, and please listen clearly. The council accept the report as information and direct administration to include resources required to advance the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations into the 2022 budget for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
that-
I appreciate you repeating that. So
That's the recommendation from administration that is trying to capture what Councillor McFadden and Flowers are suggesting. Maybe if there's something different, can either of you correct me?
McFadden accepted my friendly amendment to specifically say that we would include funds in the 2022 draft budget for an Indigenous support worker and related expenses.
Yeah, so the language as proposed from administration, fit the context that I was trying to propose, but I do support Councillor Flowers' specific language as well. So if we could include the two into one motion, I think we'll.
So what was your
To
addendum?
direct administration to develop sorry, I got the wrong one. To direct staff to build into the 2022 draft budget the funds for an Indigenous support worker and related expenses.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, are you clear on the motion? Yeah. Back to you. Are you?
I have nothing further to add. I just thought I'd better at least speak my mind as I listen to it. And I think this is more of a topic of conversation for the next budget than it is right here, since we're not assigning any funds. We're just promoting a recommendation, if I understand. So
Yeah,
thank you, I appreciate it.
The way I understand the motion is that we would direct administration to include this for consideration by the next council in the draft budget. And at that time, the council would include or add or do whatever they would like at that time.
Understood. Thank you for the clarity.
Okay. Everybody's clear on the direction? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Flowers, your light's still on. Do you have something? Okay, no, just checking. One other thing that I would say, and I think there's, it's been a good dialogue. I appreciate the report. I agree with you in some respect, Councillor Wilson, about the AUMA recommendations. They're less interesting to me, I guess, and that's not the right word. I think impactful, maybe. I really like the list that's outlined here through the town of Cochrane list, that part of the recommendations and the additional capacity and internal resources required to do that. But developing a truth and reconciliation strategy makes sense to me. Working with Indigenous advisors to assist with the development of truth and reconciliation strategy, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but those two really struck me. The leadership engagement, and just to build upon what Councillor Flowers said, I think we've we've made a good start with some blanket exercising for administration. My ask would be that those types of programs, and I know the workshops that were offered here late this summer, which I'd signed up for and I couldn't make, but to extend that to council as well. I think what I would share with my encounter, I guess, as mayor this last 4 years, trying to build relationship and trying to extend the town of Cochrane's olive branch, as you put it, Councillor Padeco, to Stoney Nakoda has been difficult for me, not because we don't have a willing partner. I don't understand. And I think that's the learning that we have to do as an organization, as a community, and I just hope that we would include council in some of those future learnings as well, so that we don't, and I think the hardest part of building relationship is starting. And I feel, and I'm being brutally honest here, hesitant at times because I'm unaware and I don't feel comfortable in the situation. If we can get rid of some of that uncomfortableness through some of these actions, and not all of them require resources, I think we can do a lot of that work on our own. We just need to want to, and we do, is what I'm hearing. And I think for me that would be very beneficial. I think breaking down some of the barriers that a lot of the time are just perceived by ourselves and are not there at all. So please, in the future, include council in some of that. I do see that number 6 is the land acknowledgement training and development and implementation. So again, that's something that we can do here in the community. It's easy. Again, I've been asked as mayor why we don't do this so much, and I would like to know exactly why we're saying it, who we're saying it to, and is it meaningful to the people that we're trying to reach. And I'm hopeful that that training would include those aspects of that as well. So yes, a lot of work to do, but it's exciting that we're leaning into it and getting after it. So I thank you for everyone that's been here tonight to share. Thank you for all the work, Melissa, that you did on the report. And Gloria and Ken, thank you for sharing your words with us, and ceremonial gift. It's humbling, and thank you on behalf of the residents of Cochrane for being here tonight.
If I may just add, Mr. Mayor, I think I appreciate those words, and I don't want to take away from them, but one of the reasons that we preferred to have a report come forward that was more focused on the resourcing than the specific recommendations is because we want to have the resources to develop pieces that are meaningful to our community and to our local Indigenous community. And in absence of resources, we're left with some homogeneous, one-size-fits-all kind of, and they're better than nothing, and they can help and they can guide. But we believe that a more thoughtful approach that is specific to our context, our organization, and our community makes the most sense moving forward.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I don't think we're taking it as a money or nothing, but it's a point that I'm glad administration has made clear to us, that to make meaningful and deliberate, intentional change in this file, we need to have those same resources allocated to it. And we haven't had enough to do this as outlined yet, is what I'm hearing from the report.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Reid, you have a...
Well, just before we get to the vote, in terms of the motion, I just wanted to say that I really appreciated this evening as well. It is part of the learning journey for me. But I wanted to segue back to, and I appreciate Councillor Wilson's perspective. I always valued his input. I wanted to go back to something that Councillor Padeco was talking about, and that is not to minimize the importance of reconciliation, but I think not recognize the marginalized people, members of our community, I think, and looking to create a full-time position for that and not recognizing the other, I think, just doesn't address the issue. I don't know if this is a full-time position. I don't understand all the nuances of that, and so while I'm happy to recognize that there needs to be some resources put aside for it, I'm troubled by just saying, creating a position like this, a full-time position just for this, and not addressing what I think Councillor Federico was talking about is a larger issue of the marginalized members of our community as a whole, right? I think we're looking at an important part of the piece of this puzzle, but not all of it. And so I probably will not be supporting the recommendation of the motion, although I'm sympathetic and supportive of it, but not in the form that it's coming forward.
If I may, Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Reid and your council colleagues, I think it's more important tonight that the commitment is made to the conversation, and I do think there is obviously some nuance and specifics, and I don't think tonight is the right time to get connected to the kind of specific pieces there, and that conversation would flow naturally as part of the budgetary process, and administration obviously cognizant of a really nuanced and you know, intersectional space here that we have growing responsibility for, and I think this is reflective of Councillor Wilson. What is the right time, place for us to engage in these issues? I just don't think tonight is the right time to get into those pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Derricott. And we are kind of going down a couple of different rabbit holes here, and I think Councillor Flowers, you're being specific with a dedicated resource. How did you word that again, sorry? I guess before you say it, I think the administrative recommendation is to have, I need to read it again, but it's about adding resources, or sorry, here we go. Include resources required to advance the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations in the 2022 budget for consideration. I think that is what you're saying, Councillor Reid, allows some not so dedicated resources to a position, but it's a broader view. So
if I may, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I may jump up, I honestly don't think the wording of either of those motions precludes the future conversation that we would need to have around that. And so I just want to offer the, oops, sorry, so I smacked the microphone there. I just want to offer that as perspective is that I think that this conversation looks identical regardless of whether the motion was more generic or more specific, as administration would still come forward with a recommendation about how we best feel to meet the needs of our community.
Yeah, and I'm hearing that. I'm just hearing council colleagues that are resistant to supporting the motion, and I'd like to get us all onto the same page, and I think that's what I'm hearing. Councillor Federico?
Yeah, thank you for that clarity. I think I understand where Councillor Reid is going, because I do have to agree it's a much broader thing, and I think Councillor Flowers, I certainly understand you know, you becoming kind of more specific, because you don't want to see this get lost, and you don't want to see it all of a sudden fall apart and then it never happens, right? So I totally appreciate it. I think that's where you're probably coming from, is to making sure that we're actually dedicated. But I think it's such a much bigger conversation to me that I want to kind of go back to that original motion that was brought forward from administration, that we look at this as maybe a broader context, because I think we're all going to get lost in the specifics of supporting a specific worker than we are talking about a broader conversation that needs to happen.
Okay, Councillor Flowers?
As you said, I'm happy to go with the original language. It's just that I don't want this to get lost. It's about truth and reconciliation. That's what we're here to talk about tonight, and it's huge in itself, so we don't need to complicate it any further. So I'm happy.
I'll just offer my commitment on behalf of the organization, administration, Councillor Flowers, that the truth and reconciliation component of this will be central to our preparation of that piece for the 2022 budget.
Thank you.
Okay, so am I hearing that you're amending, or it's the friendly reversal of amendments back to, and I'll just read it again, maybe Jaylene was nice enough to try to capture this for us. The council accept the report as information, we're all agreeing on that, potentially, and direct administration to include resources required to advance the truth and reconciliation recommendations into the 2022 budget for consideration. Everybody's clear with that? Okay. I don't see any other lights on. I don't see anybody diving for the microphone. So I will call the question. All those in favor of that motion? Those opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. And I believe, Councillor Flowers, you had an additional motion you wish to make?
Yes, I'm concerned that we need to get started and we don't want to shelve this work. So I think a committee to start talking about it, working on things that don't cost money. Not everything costs money, but there's a lot of changes that we can make without resources. So I would like to direct administration to develop a working committee that includes collaboration from the beginning with Indigenous community members.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Nagel, you wish to speak to that?
I would just say that I think what we should be doing this evening on this issue and other issues is really viewing as like we're at the end of the road for this council. I don't think we should be spending money or creating committees or decisions for the next council to do. So what I think we should do is, to be clear, I wholeheartedly support the committee. I think it's a great idea. But I think we should word the motion to present the idea to the next council, perhaps. And that's where I land on this issue. I liked what we just did with the last motion. I think everything should be done in the context of, let's take this idea and let's recommend this idea to the next batch, but whoever sits here in 5 or 6 weeks, it's their call. That's what I think, if that makes sense. So rather than starting a new project today, let's just send the idea, if that makes sense. Anyways, my thoughts.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I certainly support and endorse where Councillor Nagel's coming from on this. This is our last meeting. I think we've run out our mandate to give instructions and to dedicate funds in any way, shape, or form. So I think for me overall, tonight's meeting is about listening, receiving information, but the actual decisions of what administration is going to be focusing on and how we're going to be allocating taxpayers' budgets at this point, and this is how I'm going to be looking at the local work tonight, is for the next council to decide. So I completely support where you're coming from, Councillor Nagel. Thank you very much.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, I would disagree. I think we're elected officials. We have a responsibility, and I think we're abdicating our responsibilities by punting it off to the next council. I also believe the next council would see the value in this, and this is, for me, you know, this will carry on no matter whether we do it or the next council does, but I think we have a responsibility to see this through. And so my only wording would be, I'm not sure what a working group is versus a task force. Task force, in my mind, has an end date, and a working group would, I think, continue on for some period of time. But I think we, you know, in all of the things that we're dealing with tonight, I think if we're just going to punt it off to the next council, we're abdicating our responsibility as elected officials, and I'm not comfortable with that. And so I'm in support of this, and I think the next council would be as well. And I think some of the other decisions we'll make tonight as well reflect the fact that we have a responsibility in the term of our elected years to do that. So I support Councillor Flowers in seeing us go forward.
Councillor Federico?
I can certainly understand the need to kind of get going, but again, it opens up a bigger, broader conversation to me that we actually don't have. What is this working group going to discuss? And I'd like to see probably representation from all different minority groups within our community, right? So I don't know what that looks like. So I certainly don't want, you're right, I don't want to say necessarily shove this off onto the next council to decide, but I think that there needs to be something brought back as to what this working group is actually, who's it going to include? What groups is it going to include? What's their mandate? Like, I don't want to just say, hey, let's put together a group, but we don't even know what that group is or what they're going to be discussing. I think it could end up blowing up more in our faces if we're not careful about who we're actually including, how we're including them, and how we're going to engage them. And then what's their responsibility? Are they coming back to council? I think that it just opens up a bigger, broader conversation for me that I'm willing to necessarily have right now to form this group tonight, but I certainly can understand your point that we don't want to shove it off and just not do anything either, right? So I don't know if it needs to come back. Perhaps maybe it's addressed in the first council meeting for the new council members who are sitting around the table.
Mr. Mayor,
Before you start,
Yeah.
I'll just weigh in a little bit before we go around the table one more time. And I think we're a little bit we're remiss in understanding that a task force, a committee, whatever we want to call it, does require resources from our organization. It's not just something that we could move on our own, you know, and I understand the desire, the willingness, and the drive behind what you're talking about, Councillor Flowers, I get that, and I agree with it. I think we should have this as a part of the last motion for administration to consider as part of the budget, and maybe one of the recommendations coming out of that budget, so that administration has the opportunity to understand the capacity of who's going to do the work? Who's going to be the one that leads this committee administratively? It's the first question I would have. And there are a lot of irons in the fire, and I'm not saying this is a lesser priority than any of those, but we haven't given it that due diligence to really, or our administration time to really flesh that out of how it's going to look and work. So I would suggest that I would agree that we included in the conversation for the budget of the deliberations of 2022 is my suggestion. Mr. Derricott, were you?
I don't have anything to add to that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councillor Nagel, back to you.
Yeah, just want to clarify that for me, my position is not about abdicating responsibility. It's about just the logical flow of how we're going to do things. If we were to assume that we were here for another 12 months, the process we would go through to develop this committee is we would ask our administration to bring back a report in terms of operation like we have for the previous committees, and we'd see it again in 2 or 4 weeks and be voted on in that matter. We wouldn't just rush it through tonight. I'm not advocating responsibility, because if there were the option to pass this thing this evening, I would say, sure, let's do it. If we were going to be here for another year, I would support that. I'm not having a hard time choosing which side of the fence I'm on this issue. I just think that the correct course of action is maybe to change the motion to ask administration to put together a formal proposal for this committee and then bring that back to council. So I'm not trying to escape my duty. Sorry.
Understood. Councillor Flowers.
Well, I would agree that it should come back to council, but the intention was to get the committee talk starting, and we've done that with affordable housing, with the social recovery task force, the economic recovery. We always start talking, get a committee together, and it develops from there. We're not here tonight to put all the details in place, but the intention is just to get started and make sure it doesn't drop. If we don't start talking until 2022, budgets are already passed and it's too late to start talking. So my intention is to keep it on the table and get things moving.
Okay. Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, I certainly support where we're coming from on this, and I think, but I agree with Councillor Nagel. If we want this to succeed, we need to be strategic and deliberate, have clear expectations of what we're looking for. Even when I championed the creation of the Parks and Recreation Committee, that was a longer dialogue before we arrived at the point of let's do a task force. So I support it, and I strongly urge that be part of the public conversation that maybe different members of us are going to have over the next couple of weeks as something we want to do, but not the decision for tonight. So I certainly support where we're going from, but I think it needs to be just to demonstrate the respect for the work and for the seriousness of what we want to do. I think it does need to be deliberate, and that's where I'm coming from. It's not that I don't want to support it. I just want to put it in the best place to succeed. And as the mayor had said, that anytime we direct actions, we are directing resources, and those are limited. So I prefer that everybody keep it in mind for whoever's sitting around the table with budget.
Councillor Wilson.
I was just going to voice a little bit of support that this committee could bear good fruit. It's an idea that I like the sounds of a lot better than what we were talking about before, where I think it's actually dangerous, some of the policy proposals in there. This, in the best of light, I think would be improved communication between community members or community groups, and this could be a great idea. So I would be in support of it for whatever that's worth at this point. It's more of a budgetary item probably, but thank you to Councillor Flowers for this recommended action.
Okay, maybe let's, I don't see any other discussion. Let's repeat the motion so we're clear. Would you mind, Councillor Flowers?
To direct administration to develop a working committee that includes collaboration from the beginning with Indigenous community members.
Okay. Everybody clear on the motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that fails. Councillor Nagel.
Can I move a second motion that would be something very similar to that extent, but we turn it into a proposal for the consideration of the next council?
Motion arising, okay.
Yeah, but I don't know, I hate writing these things in my head on the spot, so can you read your language again, please?
Well, I would suggest that maybe it's a motion to direct administration to consider the committee or task force as part of the budget deliberations on truth and reconciliation.
I so move.
Is that? Does that fit? Everybody understands Councillor Nagel's motion? Okay, all those in favor of that motion? And that carries. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Nagel, for saving the intent of the action. Okay. I think we're good on that. Thank you, Mr. Derricott, for the presentation. Again, thank you to everyone in the gallery for hanging out with us and sharing this important report. Thank you. I think we should take a 10-minute recess.
Thank you.
It was weird seeing Jaylene up there, and usually I'm looking at it, it's like, what's going on? We're moving into bylaws now. Okay, I'm just trying to catch up in the agenda here. All right, Ms. Knight's joining us for 5A, procedural bylaw amendment. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. In your agenda package this evening is Bylaw 10, 2021. This bylaw amends our procedural bylaw that is established to regulate the proceedings and conduct of council, committee of the whole, and council committee meetings. The current bylaw set the timing of all council meetings at 6 p.m. And with the recent implementation of committee of the whole, administration is recommending that council be able to set and review council and committee of the whole dates and times annually at the organizational meeting. This gives council greater flexibility in changing or amending the schedule and ensures it is being reviewed consistently throughout the term. This bylaw also looks to remove the information request section. This section was included prior to the committee of the whole being implemented, and administration feels that this section is no longer required. Council has direct access to the CAO, who would be the main member of administration responding to information requests, and the MGA requires that any information that is being provided to a single councillor must be provided to all other councillors as soon as is practicable under section 153.1. This rule within the MGA ensures that all of council receives consistent information regardless of timing or knowledge of the initial request by a member of council. Even without information requests within the bylaw, council always has the ability to put forward a notice of motion should there be something important that they want administration to provide information on in a public forum. The final revision seeks to formalize a process that was already being followed in regard to how delegations are coming forward to council. Administration continues to believe the ability for residents to come before council is an integral part of open and transparent government. However, there are times that council is not the appropriate venue for resident concerns. Administration has already routinely redirected some requests internally where we felt there may be a faster resolution for residents. And this amendment seeks to formalize this process. In addition, the revised delegation section also works to provide greater clarity to residents who bring forward delegation requests that not all requests will come before council, and also confirmation of who the final approver is where there may be uncertainty. Administration is recommending that council give all 3 readings to Bylaw 10 this evening in order to ensure these efficiencies and process updates are in effect in advance of the start of the next council term. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on Bylaw 10.
Okay, so first we need a first reading. Councillor Padeco.
I'll make a motion to do first reading to start off.
Okay. Usually no debate at first reading. All those in favor of giving first reading? That carries. Thank you. Councillor Fideko, you have your light on still?
Yeah, I certainly can understand some different parts. Well, it's multifaceted, so I understand all the parts to it, but I kind of think that, and I don't want to say that I'm kind of pushing this off to the next council, but I think there are some things in here that next council should be able to decide, including things along with times, delegations. I don't really feel that this is the time for this council to be able to vote on that personally. I think that some of those decisions should take in their input. And I can certainly understand that you need to have a start time for that first council meeting. I would support that initial council meeting to start at 5 o'clock, I believe it is. But I think after that, that conversation needs to be opened up around the table with the new council going forward. But that's my opinion. I'll wait to hear what my colleagues think.
Just for clarity, Ms. Knight, if you can, it's not that we're setting the time for the next
You're not.
council. It's the next council gets the opportunity to set the time for themselves with this change. Is that clear?
Through the mayor, that is correct. This change would allow for the next council at their first meeting to set the dates and times for all of their council and committee of the whole meetings. And then they would have the flexibility to review that schedule every year at the organizational meeting, which happens at every October, the second meeting in October. And so that they could continue to switch some of these dates and times should they feel that there's a greater need or a lesser need required.
So what Councillor Fideko's asking is exactly what this bylaw is going to do.
Certainly.
The delegation stuff, I'm still kind of lost, and I don't feel that we've had like an overabundance of delegations come forward. And I can certainly understand that sometimes, yes, somebody might approach administration and not have, be trying to bring forward something that's not an appropriate spot. But I don't really feel that we need to. I guess I worry that if everything's running through administration, what gets lost on what could be brought our way, right? And that to me is just a bigger conversation that I'm not sure of.
Just, if I may provide some clarity, Councillor Fideko, what we're proposing here is what we're actually already doing and have been doing for many years now. What is lost right now is the clarity for residents. Because our delegation section in our current procedural bylaw is so narrow, it doesn't provide them any understanding of what the process actually is. And so all delegation requests come through my department. Where there are concerns about something coming forward, we certainly go to the CAO to get some further direction. But this just provides the clarity that I think has been missing in our current delegation process. That residents then can understand that at times you will get redirected because we actually administratively have the tools in place that can handle what that concern is related to in a quicker fashion than putting it in front of council. And so, again, this is just for clarity more than anything else because we have been doing this process for many years.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's just the timing of it all coming forward tonight that makes me a little bit more nervous, especially as we're leaving our positions.
Okay. Councillor Flowers.
Yes, I too have concerns about the timing and the communication. We work so hard to try to communicate with the public, and it just feels like there's more constraints this way. Just things like only one person's allowed to present, and in the past we've often had 2 or 3 people get up and present. Taking away the question from administration on the agenda. We've only used it a couple times over the years, but it's another tool for us to bring something forward, especially when we're in a hurry because the meetings, the way they fall, sometimes we just miss an opportunity to discuss something that's really critical in the community. So I would hate to lose that specific tool. And it feels like more red tape. I'm not sure that it is after hearing you talk about it, but it feels like it is. I just don't feel that I can support it right at this time.
Okay, maybe just another point for clarity. We're asking for all 4 motions tonight, right? So unanimous consent. I'm not hearing we're not trending in that direction. So procedurally, to move forward, well, or not to move forward, no one's given the motion for second reading yet.
Correct.
What's your advice on moving forward so that we're within our procedural?
Well, if council is opting to not move forward with this bylaw, it would come back to the next council. If administration was still feeling this is the direction we want to go, we would bring it forward to the next council for their consideration.
So then we can talk about it all we want tonight, but then don't move second reading. Just
Correct.
go to the next agenda item. Okay. Just wanted to make sure we were all understanding what, especially me, what we're doing here. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, if this is just, yeah, in order for this to go, you need unanimous consent. It's looking like that's not going to happen, so we're pretty much stopping at first reading. So I'll just share my opinions on this. The flexibility of the schedule to be reviewed on an annual basis, I think, is a really good idea, so that the work can fit the context of the council today. So I really like that. The information for request, I was initially like, yeah, we don't use it all that often. I won't miss it. But I've actually been swayed by Councillor Flower's point, is that sometimes we want to, or we need to ask the question at that time and to be seen to be asking that question at that time. So I don't feel it's ever really been onerous to keep it on there, so I would be in favor of keeping that on there. And then finally, you know, I get the delegation process that, you know, at the end of the day, the CAO gets to kind of be the final decision maker, but it's not quite accurate because council could direct otherwise if they so choose. That's correct.
Council could bring forward a notice of motion advising us to bring a certain delegation forward. I can confirm that we have rarely refused delegations. More often than not, we are redirecting them to internal resources to deal with the issue that they are bringing forward. Not when they bring it to us, they don't always understand that there is an administrative avenue to solving their issue. So I would say the majority of the ones that have not come and stood here before you all have been dealt with independently by administration.
Sure, yeah, and I do understand that. I think, you know, unless you're like closely engaged in the municipal process, you probably don't understand that if you have a thought or you want to present an idea, that it doesn't always have to be standing in front of council, that there's different ways to engage with the municipality in meaningful ways. So I can understand that, but anyway, so just if we're sharing our thoughts, those were my thoughts, were the three main points of the procedural bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nagel.
Yeah, I'm in favor of letting this whole thing die, but I don't really think it's necessarily a choice because we need unanimous consent to move it forward. Just sharing some thoughts as well. I think administration's done a great job with delegations. There have been some delegations that in a strict red tape ridden environment probably wouldn't have made it through, and the fact that they've been here, I appreciate that, because it's good that every member and every group in our community feels that they have a voice when they come to council. So yeah, I have no other comments.
Okay, I had a whole list of things, but I was generally in favor of moving forward tonight, but I understand that likely not, so there's no sense getting into it much further. But okay, so I don't see anyone diving forward to put second reading on the floor. No?
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you, Ms. Knight. Okay, moving into business. Heritage Hill Stage 2 Neighborhood Plan. Following through on the public hearing from earlier tonight.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'll keep my presentation very brief. Administration is recommending that Council adopt the amended Heritage Hills Stage 2 Neighborhood Plan. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your brevity. Councillor Nagel?
I will move for recommended action. I think the proposal they put forward looks quite nice, and I will jump on any opportunity I can to reduce density, even if it's just by a small number of houses. Thanks.
11 units, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Don't see any other discussion. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Heinman. It's not 6A, we're on to 6A was quite thick in here. 6B, Mr. Derricott, you're back. AUMA Emergent Resolution Ambulance Service Delivery.
We're on. Oh, there we
There
go.
you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be brief as well. I think the key information is in the report. We are asking council to offer a letter of support for the Okotoks resolution that would go forward to AUMA. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
I'm happy to support option one in terms of this recommendation. I think it's kind of ironic that it was at the start of the term, my term at least on council, that I had raised this concern, and then 4 years later, we're still kind of trying to deal with it. So I'm happy to support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McFadden?
Yes, I'm glad to support this as well. The Town of Okotoks Emergent Resolution on Ambulance Service Delivery to be heard at the 2021 AUMA Convention. Having sat on the AUMA Governance Committee, I'm familiar with this change in the process where they're trying to get different municipalities to support it in advance to make sure that it's more broad-based. So I'm glad that we're working with Okotoks to make this happen, and hopefully Cochrane will be able to support this at AUMA, and that it will be heard by willing ears.
Mr. Mayor, I perhaps neglected one piece of information administration would like to share. Ms. Hubrick has a list of our municipalities who've already provided support that I would maybe have her share just for information as well.
Yeah, so we have confirmed that of the 9 municipalities that the town of Okotoks has requested to participate in this, the only municipality still awaiting consideration was the town of High River, who is meeting tonight. The town of Okotoks is also meeting tonight for final consideration, but it has been supported by the city of Chestermere, the city of Airdrie, the town of Black Diamond, the town of Turner Valley, the town of Strathmore.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Badeko?
I'm of course in support of this as being one of the other members of council that are on the Citizen Action Group for the EMS. Yeah, you can bet we want to see this go forward. I'm sure that we want that message to be heard loud and clear from our town.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, Councillor Badeko. And maybe just a small aside, I mean, community's aware there's been some talk in town halls, et cetera, in this regard. And I'm glad we're taking a municipal approach, and you know, I think we're really in the fact-finding arena right now, wading through information, and this is a piece of that. So it's never a clear, easy, quick answer. As we've found out in other areas, you got to do your due diligence, contact different layers of AHS, and liaise with other communities, and I think this is a great first step in that regard. So Councillor Wilson, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, thank you. It does seem to me to be a quite exceptional solution with the one caveat. I'm kind of curious what our situation in town is with, it says having firefighters that can provide first medical response training. So I know that a lot of our fire crews do already have that in Cochrane. I was just wondering, I don't see Mrs. Lowe's face today, but where do we sit right now with training in our fire department, and how might this affect Cochrane if it does go through?
Yes, thank you. I think that part of the report is referring to the fact that we actually have firefighting personnel who are trained at a higher medical level than the program currently allows them to provide care. So as part of the medical first response program, there's limits around what we can do in providing that initial care. And so even if we have a trained paramedic who's a part of our crew, which we do have some, cannot provide the services of a paramedic, even though we may be on scene there. And so I think what I would say is that is certainly a source of extreme frustration at the boots on the ground operational level, and they're feeling that very, very much.
Thank you. Anecdotally, I remember Councillor Reid might have the same recollection. We went for a day-long training course with our fire crews here in Cochrane, and I remember them being generally supportive of having additional medical training and utilizing this sort of an approach. So I don't know if that's characteristic of the whole team or not, but it stands to reason that this seems like a good solution to me too. Thank you. Okay.
Councillor Reid, did you make the motion? Yeah. Okay, I don't see any other discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Supporting AUMA resolution, that carries. Thank you, Mr. Derricott. I think you're staying with us for
Yeah, I think you're stuck with me for another one here.
6C 2021 Major Capital Projects Update. Excellent.
Thank you, Mayor. I will just offer a relatively brief update. There's a more detailed one, obviously, in the packages, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. I may, of course, defer to some of my colleagues, depending on the nature of the questions. We've identified 4 projects that we consider to be high priority this year, beginning with the Highway 1 improvements. Maybe I can just stop by saying there's now a left turn lane there as you come down the hill, and
Yes.
project update over. But we're happy to report that, happy to report that there's obviously been great progress on the critical elements of that. Some observers will have maybe noticed for quite some time that it appears as though we weren't working on the road at all, and that is correct, because most of the early stages of the project included material relocation for stormwater management, as well as dealing with ancillary services, both those that are owned by the town, water and sewer, as well as shallow services, power, Shaw, Telus, and other pieces. So council may also recall that this project is now being approached in 2 phases. Happy to report that phase 1 is on schedule and on budget, which means we anticipate the east end of this project through Center Avenue to be completed in the fall of this year, and that the phase 2 work, which is currently being worked to be finalized, will be presented to council, I should say, the new council, for formal adoption to begin work in some cases with earth moving almost immediately following phase 1's completion. New protective services building, again, if you've driven by, it's easy to see the progress that's being made there in the building, where there was
Mr.
nothing.
Derricott, sorry.
Yep.
If I can just interrupt. Maybe we'll have questions per project.
I certainly defer to your discretion. I think probably for efficiency, because there may be questions that apply to more than one project,
Okay.
perhaps I could go
makes
through
sense.
that. But for example, as you'll hear me mention with the transit hub as well, the biggest implication for this capital project, which is currently again on schedule and on budget, is the significant supply chain issues that are reverberating throughout the construction industry. And so we were able to secure pricing that has kept us on budget, but we have pressured our contingencies associated with this and the other projects. So it would be nice to assume that nothing else will change, but at this point, the protective services building and the transit hub may experience further pressure due to those constraints that are currently being felt there. One additional item to mention on the station, maybe I got to start getting used to calling it that, refer to it as the transit hub, is just to close the loop on the remediation work that was required there. That work has been completed. It was within the budget allocated by council. The final piece of that is just completing reporting to Alberta Environment to ensure that we receive a complete designation as a clean site. We anticipate that is progressing as it should. There is a delay of about 7 weeks in relation to that remediation work. We still anticipate that this project will be completed in the summer of 2022. However, it did obviously put pressure on the timelines, having to deal with that additional variable there. And finally, although the early work is modest, we're happy to report that the Highway 1A 22 utility relocation project is underway, which will make way for the much needed interchange project. This has been done in close conjunction with Alberta Transportation to ensure that our timelines match up with what their proposed timelines are, and that we are well out of the way to ensure that there's no delays or impacts to what we hope to see is a quick uptake of the interchange project here in 2022. So I will perhaps leave it there. Mr. Mayor, there was obviously, as I mentioned, more detail in the report proper, and would be happy to answer questions. Thank you for your patience, Councillor Reid.
Councillor Reid, go ahead with your question, please.
Well, I thought it was going to be a much longer presentation, so I don't want to lose my questions. Just on the 1A project, so the mayor's done a great job in terms of the video updates, which, by the way, have been incredible, and I and the members of the community that have spoken to me have really appreciated that. I think what's still missing is people haven't really grasped that there is a second phase to all of this. They're assuming that everything will be done as part of phase 1. And so just a word of caution that you might want to continue to emphasize that point. The questions that I had about the 1A project was, it's assumed that Center Street will be repaved. And I've suggested to the members of the community that was a given, right? Because the road is, after the weekend rain, is kind of dangerous in some places, and it isn't going to be left that way. And the other question that I had received from the community was, what would become of the old KFC site? And will it be just a continuation of the old town site and it be a park area for the time being? And so those were two questions I had there. And then the other one was on the protective services. There's some rhetoric in the community about the original costs for that building from years ago and what it's costing now. And I mean, what the original estimates were, again, years ago, not in recent memory, but from years ago, and what the current costs are there's a huge difference. And I think that it'd be wise, again, in terms of communications to the public, to say that original cost from years ago was just that, an estimate. But this is a whole different building and a whole different location and a whole different size. And just to remind people that this will be heavily subsidized in terms of the cost by the RCMP themselves. So it's not like the town has, taken on this heavy burden, although it has, but that it clearly is going to be paid for over the course of that building. So those were kind of my thoughts or comments or questions.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. I will certainly do my best to address them, and please don't be shy to prompt me if I missed any of the points that you raised there. First, I'll perhaps address the communication piece. Obviously welcome the feedback and appreciate those points. And I agree that it is important that the public knows that Project 1A is going to happen in a phased approach. Part of the interest is hoping to finalize exactly what the next phase will look like and have a little bit more to say about it. But I don't think that precludes us in the early going from ensuring that is a generally understood piece of that. As well as the protective services building. I'm sure Kristen will be happy to just take that note back and see how we can augment the communication on that project to ensure that kind of early conversations and how they've evolved into our current state, of which there's a number of variables. I think you noted some, and not the least of which is just the strong inflationary pressures on construction and et cetera that come along with that. So I think I've already forgotten the next question. I apologize, but
Center Street being repaved, and what would come of the old KFC?
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So for Center Street, obviously, there's a section of Center Street that will be resurfaced. Excuse me, not repurposed. It's going to still be a road when we're done, but resurfaced, obviously. In conjunction with that, I apologize, I'm not so good with street names, but the street directly south of the old town hall site. 7th Street, yeah, sure, thank you. Is that the right one? I'll take your word for it, Mr. Mayor. 2nd, did you say? Oh, 7th, yeah. I was like 7th. Anyway, basically that Center Street will be new up until, at minimum, that space, and then there may be a little bit of additional work there that comes along with that. So rest assured that the areas that we'll be working on will present as a new roadway. The old KFC building, yeah, it just exists on now the old town hall site. I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head whether or not it's a consolidated parcel or not, but I think for the purposes of what will we do with that project moving forward, or property moving forward, we would just consider that now all to be the old town hall site, and what would become appropriate as we consider opportunities to put that to community use moving forward. That's right, in the short term, yeah. Yeah, I think, thank you. I think there's a natural potential for what is a relatively low development parking lot to just be extended kind of into that space is honestly probably the most likely outcome, in particular if we continue to consider producing that temporary skating surface, which I think was a really nice thing there. Certainly some additional parking wouldn't be amiss.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor McFadden?
Thank you, Mayor Janone. So one question on your update. Any timeline on working with the province and our work on getting the railway crossing?
Is this the pedestrian crossing? Yeah, so I will, perhaps Drew, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that is all on track and there's no current concerns with that process. I got the thumbs up from Mr. Heinman, so.
Remind me of the date for on track.
For completion of that project, Drew?
At what point will I be able to walk across safely without CP rail arresting me?
Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, that will be next summer. They're proceeding with some of the spur line or additional track removal this fall. And then we'll be working on the provincial side, and I was down on site this morning, and the work at the transit hub or the station is proceeding quite well. So this summer you'll be able to, or next summer you'll be able to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the update. I just wanted to, congratulate staff for continuing to move these major projects ahead. I think maybe we lose track of how amazing it is that we're able to implement this much change and needed infrastructure to our community. It's hats off to all of the administrative team that's actually making this happen. I really appreciate it. I also want to pass on kudos for the communication. I know that the mayor's been the face and the voice of a lot of this, but the social media work has been really well done on all of the projects, and even keeping updated the construction update page on our website. I think the organization overall is really taking the communications and transparency to the next level, and I'm very proud of where we're at as an organization with it. So kudos to the team that's making that happen.
Just look to your immediate right.
Yeah, thank you once again. As per most of my reports, I'll take very little credit for all of that, and you're right to acknowledge the good work of our administrative team.
I would just highlight that it was communications that put me in front of the camera, and here's what you're talking about. So thank you again. Yeah, that's kudos well spread throughout the team. Councillor Nagel.
Yeah, a couple of questions. So do we currently have plans for what we're going to do with the existing RCMP facility when the new protective services building is going to be done? I know we've talked about this in the past, but can you please remind me of what the exact plan is?
Yes, thank you once again. I will hope to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I believe it is owned by the federal government. And so we have had conversations with them about what their intentions are. At this point, we have no indication of what that may be. We don't anticipate the federal government's speed of disposing of assets to be swift. I will just say it that way. But we have already entered into the conversation as what we hope will be a considered partner when they do decide what they're going to do with that asset.
So sorry, just to clarify, we will have full ownership of the new one we're building, which seems like a crazy question to be asking at this point in time. But
that is absolutely correct, yes.
Right. Okay. And then second question is with regards to the station and its role as a tech incubator. At what point does administration plan on bringing some sort of proposal or project to the future council about actually developing some entrepreneurship and business programming?
Yeah, thank you. So that work is active and ongoing, and certainly well ahead of the completion of the facility itself. The new council will see the proposed programming that would take place in that space. I think while tech is certainly a part of it, the initial pieces are business incubation and innovation in general, of which obviously tech is normally a part of that, but we hope that it will be a broader opportunity for our business community to collaborate and create new opportunities in our community. That's, I think, about as much as I could comfortably say at this stage. But seeing as how that project is scheduled for completion in early to midsummer of next year. It would be fairly early in the new council's term where I think they would start to see some of the programming elements come back.
And how much of the space in there is going to be allocated to that programming?
Yeah, again, I apologize, I don't have the specifics, but it's a significant portion of a third or better of the active space. It certainly will, it does present us with some really significant opportunities to offer some new and exciting programs in our community.
Great, thanks.
Councilor McFadden? Oh, sorry, Federico? I was looking at you and.
Whoever.
It's the glass.
I kind of agree with Councillor Reid on the Protective Services building. Maybe getting a clearer update as to what the province is going to be paying for, as to what the town is going to be paying for. And I seem to remember having this conversation a long time ago, and I think I asked Ms. Lowe, I said, at the last update that she provided, I'm like, that cost isn't going to go any higher, is it? And she's like, no, we're not going any higher. So I think taking that message back out to the community that there might be some additional costs is really important to do now. Yeah. And especially explaining the why. I think everybody gets it that costs have obviously gone up for construction stuff, but I think we need to be very clear that that's definitely, it's likely going to happen in all our projects. And the only other question that I had is obviously now with the KFC site, that temporary skating rink it's obviously not going to happen coming into this
That's
winter.
correct.
Is there a possibility that could perhaps be recreated maybe in the ranch? I think that there was a big portion of the public that really enjoyed being able to go out to a public area and being able to skate. And I mean, the ranch site, I don't know if it could be put there, but maybe for 1 year or 2 years while we're doing construction in that area, if it's something that we could at least perhaps consider as a town to be able to offer.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's thank you for noting that it's not going to happen there this year. And we're certainly administratively, we recognize very clearly how popular that was and we'll be pursuing opportunities to provide that. Again, at this stage, I wouldn't be comfortable saying anything specific other than we have that interest and we'll be pursuing that. And for the Protective Services building, my apologies, I didn't mean to overstate that. At this point, the project is on budget, and my comment was perhaps more of a generic one, which is, things can happen, but we feel actually quite comfortable with that project. The station is a little bit tighter for the contingency pressure that we felt, and so I'll do my best there to assuage the initial thoughts there and hope for continued good work. The project management has been very direct there to ensure the budgetary limits and constraints are met, and I hope to see that remain the case.
I think Mr. Stewart, you have an additional comment?
I'm sorry to inform my boss that he may not know actually everything. But because we've had some discussions about the rink and seeing if we can possibly squeeze that in, we won't maybe able to have parking, but we've just had some discussions like in the last day or so. So we're not promising, but we're certainly taking a look at it.
Is that to say the skating area?
Yes.
Well, there's some good news there. There you go. I leave that for Gord and his team. So. I think it's just a reflection of sometimes the simplest and most ad hoc things turn out to produce really, really good value, and that wasn't lost on us at all. So.
Okay. I don't think we have a motion on the floor yet. Wow. I'm keeping up. Would somebody like to make a motion? Everybody needs to get their name on the last agenda.
Oh, I didn't need that. I'm happy to do it just in the essence of time.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. And thank you for the update, Mr. Derricott. All those in favor of receiving his information? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Heineman for 6D Horse Creek Sports Park project update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to provide an update on this project. As I walk through this, just in terms of the presentation, just want to do a brief review of the background and history to this. You may recall we were before you in 2019, and we approved a plan. Obviously, some of the elements within that plan did not materialize, so we had an opportunity, and that opportunity is to optimize the design and come up with some better outcomes. So I want to talk about the guiding principles. I really also want to thank the Parks and Rec Committee, in particular Councillor McFadden, Councillor Reid, who both participated on this, and the committee itself. We created these guiding principles that we'll discuss, and we've come up with a revised and optimized master site plan for these lines that I think is a much better outcome for our community. And then I'll talk about the next steps, because really it's an opportunity this evening to provide a bit of an update for you prior to the fall election. And then there is still some significant work that we need to do before we're able to present this as a final product for your for future council's formal consideration, and then obviously give you the opportunity to ask any questions. Speaking of 2019, this is the master site plan that was approved. Some of the elements that I'm just going to highlight very quickly. Obviously, there was the Southland maintenance facility. That was the 7 acres that was in the northwest corner. There was the town maintenance facility that was included. There was also a central clubhouse with skating surfaces. I would point out that there is a pressure zone that is identified here on the map. So as we were intending to service this portion in the northwest, we felt that we would be able to service this as well. But as this is the portion that has never really materialized, there's an opportunity to revisit that. So that was one of the significant opportunities to really optimize the design. Many of the elements stay very similar to this design, but as you'll quickly see, I think we've come up with a much better design with much better outcomes for future users of the park, adjacent communities, and certainly the community as a whole. Wanted to share the guiding principles. So these are the 10 guiding principles that the committee came up with. So I'll just briefly read them. That to create a 4-season recreational amenity that builds community, incorporate flexible amenities to accommodate multiple uses, including both active and passive recreation, focus on amateur sports at the community scale with the potential to enhance the level of play and attract regional users, accommodate people of all ages, abilities through accessible and inclusive design, integrate strategic buffering through soft landscape design to complement the core uses. So really the intent there was, how do we fit this all in and buffer the various uses from one another? Because of course the high school site, the future high school site for Heritage Hills, is an integral part of this design as well. Promote neighborhood connectivity and pedestrian circulation. I think we can all attest connectivity is one of council's main drivers and main priorities. So ensuring that people can get to this site and circulate within the site was a primary guiding principle as well. Prioritize and maintain existing view corridors. If you had an opportunity to be out on the site, there are tremendous viewscapes that are here. Utilize sustainable water management practices. We are going to have some irrigation within this area. We have stormwater management, so that was part of our discussion. Promote community integration through the culture of sport. Sports are ingrained. I think we saw a presentation earlier tonight, the importance of sports to this community in particular, and I think there's been a number of successes through sports in our community. And then again, foster partnerships with community user groups. That was really important to the committee, as well as Rocky View Schools as our strategic partner in this. So thank you for bearing with me as I went through those, but I thought it was important to share. It is included in the report. But then when we get to the enhanced design, I just want to start in the northwest portion of the site. So we still have a potential maintenance facility but it can be utilized in the meantime for overflow parking. We've moved the BMX, or excuse me, not BMX, but the bike facilities, which includes the pump track, skills park, and flow park from down in the southeast portion up to this end. We have, again, some of the soccer and rugby pitches, as well as the quad ball diamond, substantial parking, two-way traffic on the interior road, a baseball-specific facility that, you know, certainly hearing from Cochrane Minor Ball is something that was very much needed. I think there's some great opportunities here too that we talked about at the committee level with the trail network, and the viewpoint here is that in the future, if there were concerts or community events that are here, people could gather on the hillside and participate in those, so we're quite excited about that. One of the other elements that we included is then this clubhouse or future clubhouse facility is moved within the existing pressure zone, so there's significant cost savings that are associated with that. But then you have the two hockey surfaces that are close to the change rooms that would be within this facility. We also have a community ice surface. There is a transit plaza because transit transportation will be very important to this. There's multi-court and playgrounds put throughout the site. Stormwater management is in the southwestern portion of the site. And then, of course, we've still got our 30-acre school parcel. And again, we've just put a representation of their fields, which really would incorporate into this area overall. So again, we're very pleased. We think this provides a much better outcome for the community and are very pleased with the proposed design. But that does not complete our work. Really, in terms of the next steps, is we wanted to provide you this update this evening, and then outstanding work to complete. So some of this work is outlined on this chart for you. So we're doing some ongoing work with our site partners, so Rocky View Schools. So we've got some stormwater, shared parking, and ongoing conversations with this group in terms of timing, governance, and funding requirements. Our urban, who we're working with, are refining the servicing. So how are we going to service this? I think one of the other things is the cost estimate. What is the final estimate of this? Again, whenever we present this, it's very shiny, it looks excellent, but of course your first question is how much is this going to cost? As we saw a presentation earlier tonight, $2.4 million for the artificial turf at the high school, so certainly there's some significant costs associated with this. One of the other aspects that we wanted to confirm is preferred phasing. Is how is this going to be phased over time? I think that's an important element because this is not going to be built next year. This is going to be built over many, many years. So that's something that we're working on as well. And then probably one of the most important things is the overall funding and governance strategy. How is this going to be governed? Who is going to be running it? How are the fields going to be rented out? All of those different elements. So we do have a great concept, but I also wanted to share that there's a great deal of work still to be done. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Heineman. Over to you, Councillor Padeco.
I only have one question, and maybe I missed it on this new kind of revised plan. Where are washrooms? I noticed that was a question that I got from the community about just making sure, I think, that we're kind of planning for the future to make sure that we're not kind of lumping them all in one area or one side, or but I'm not sure. Maybe I missed it.
So there would be washrooms in the central or the main clubhouse. I know in the previous design we had indicated around the playgrounds that there would be washroom facilities out, so people using the regional trail network and things. That's something I can certainly confirm, but again, it isn't specifically highlighted, but the intent was to provide different washroom facilities because this is a large space.
Yeah, because I think it's on the other one, but it's not on this new revised one. But yeah, maybe if we can get an update for that, and I think that it is something, not that it's an exciting part of the sports park, but I think that, you know what, we have to be cognizant. I think our plan and our bigger picture is to make sure that, you know, everybody has access so that you're not having to all of a sudden, you know, if you're up in one of the soccer fields, that you're not having to walk across the entire field to get to a washroom, right? Just, even if it has to be smaller banks, but more of them, I think that is something that we definitely have to consider, and especially when there's going to be tons of people using these, whether or not they're watching, playing, or just taking part in enjoying recreation.
Well, thank you. That's actually a great point. Not everybody's going to use all of these facilities, but those facilities everyone will use.
Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, you just can't top that. But I'm actually pleased to move the recommended action that council accept the presentation for information. Of all the work that I've been involved with this term, this is one of the ones that I'm most proud of, and I want to give a huge shout out to Drew and of course the volunteers who make up the Parks and Recreation Committee. There's been a lot of work going into this and a lot of public engagement to listen to the community, what their priorities were, and to come up with a design that is kind of meeting the needs for a community, amateur sports, but also to allow that growth. We started to call them feature fields, so that the different organizations that are looking to compete at provincial and higher levels, we're going to be able to have a home to be able to do that. So I think the changes to the design, I much prefer. It's now about recreation, and I think it's going to be an amazing project and something that Cochrane can really be proud of. So I'm super excited about it. On a somewhat humorous note, Councillor Wilson, the baseball field, you have to give kudos to Drew for that. He came up with the idea that you can then hit the ball all the way up the hill. So, but the design is amazing. The community work that went into it is amazing. And so this is the fun part of the project, is drawing the pretty pictures. And then bringing it to life, though, is going to be a lot of dedicated work and commitments from the municipality. Mr. Hyman has highlighted, of course, that there's the budget that needs to be discovered and planned for. None of this is currently in our 10-year plan at all. How are we going to govern it? How are we going to operate it? How do we stage it? Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will the Horse Creek Sports Park, but parts of it can be used sooner than others. So I'm super excited to be able to celebrate this on behalf of the committee and thank everybody that was involved. It's a first step, but a very important first step. So I'm glad to be sharing that with council tonight.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. Thank you for all your work on this committee. Councillor Reid?
Yeah, I thought Kara was going to make the motion, but I'll do it on her behalf.
Councillor McFadden did.
Oh, did she? Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of sitting on this committee, it's been probably one of the more rewarding things of my term on council. It actually, and thank as well Drew and the urban team, and particularly the committee members, the public members who sit on this. While this looks like it's not a lot of work, there was a great deal of work that went behind this, I can assure you. I think the real heavy lifting is yet to come, to be honest. But I think this is a great start, and it is more than just a pretty picture. There are people who are passionate about what you see here, and they've made their knowns. They made their desires and interests expressed through the committee, and I think they've done a great job. And I'm really pleased with our final product, and I too would echo the mayor's comments about Councillor McFadden stick handling this through. This was a lot of work, a lot of committee, a lot of meetings, but it got us to where we needed to be. And again, Drew, thank you and your team for your input to this.
Thank you.
Councillor Nagel?
Yeah, I think this is a really great looking plan. Do we have a rough estimation of what this would approximately cost?
That is, through the chair to Councillor Nagel, that's part of our additional work that we're going to do, but I believe it would be safe to go on the cost associated with the previous example, which was in the neighborhood of $50 million.
Ooh, okay. All right, thanks.
And with that, my light is out. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I also wanted to thank Councillor McFadden for good reason for spearheading this, because it was, I'm sure, a lot of work. I know it probably never ended the amount of meetings this took to bring it to this position, so thank you. I have a question about the sports fields. I see 7 of them on there. Or am I looking at football / soccer / rugby / all the fields? Are they multi-use, I assume? And are they all the same size? I was just curious if it's the same thing 7 times, or what I'm seeing there. Thank you.
Stab at it, and then Drew can make it right. Yeah, what we did is, the approach was multi-use, and we did bring a lot of different lenses to it. The idea is, and we did have a lot of conversations, especially, I live in fear of rugby, so part of the strategy is to make sure that at least one of the fields where you can play rugby is going to have the required depth of turf. I always forget bumper, I can't remember the correct word, but to allow them to be able to compete at the level that they want to compete. And then some of the fields on the south side fall more into the school lands, and then there's conversation about how we'll share those. But the overall approach to this was multi-use as much as possible, but to allow for some of those feature fields for that higher level of competition. And then, and there were so many different lenses put to this. It was, you know, how do you compete? How do you do the quads? How do we fit into the clubhouse? How far do we walk? How far do we bike? Where can the bikers that use Horse Creek launch from? I'm showing up as a mom to watch my kids play sports. Where is kid A playing while kid 2 is participating in the sport? So many different lenses went into this. So it was just great to get that diversity of public eyes on it to come up with some really great ideas. Absolutely hilarious to me that the outhouses aren't on it. Did I catch it?
Very well done.
Thank you.
One additional similar question is just on the grass or turf subject leading into our next subject item. You can tell me if it's too early to even ask this level of detail, but are these all grass fields? Are we expecting any of them would be AstroTurf?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, we haven't got to that level of detail at this point. Again, very high level.
Sure.
So,
yep.
And
Okay.
it could be a combination, certainly, but you've seen from the request before you on your next item, there's a significant cost associated with them.
And if I can ask one more question that you're probably going to tell me is too high level as well, on the ball diamonds, are we looking at 5 diamonds, the same dimensions, or do we know that answer yet?
The quad ball diamond is all full size. The baseball was one of Cochrane minor baseball's main challenges was to have, I believe it's, I'm going to say this wrong because I'm not familiar with baseball, but I think it's bantam, it's like 14 and above. So this would be regulation baseball, so they could host and also have the older kids play, because right now they're playing on the fields and there's limitations. So this would give them the full-size fields to compete.
Okay, thank you. And I know talking to them previously, they're very excited to get multiple diamonds that can hold tournaments in the daytime, and also have, it looks like, some sort of lighting to go into the evenings, and I'm sure that's all been considered in here as part of the master plan.
Yeah, well, we didn't speak specifically to go into the lighting at this point. It was always something that was assumed that would be at a later stage. But proximity to the clubhouse, one of the things that perhaps I failed to share is that there's pathway networks in between all the sports fields, so it'll be easy for families to get out here and travel in between the various fields, and perhaps for those families with kids at multiple events, have them dispersed through this entire space.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation.
Councillor Reid.
Drew, can you emphasize again the potential for an outdoor concert area?
Certainly. So I think with the baseball On the hillside, I think the hillside is one of the elements that we really need to recognize as quite special when these fields will be developed. But what we did talk about at the committee level is the opportunity for the infield to be covered, and perhaps if it's an outdoor concert or fireworks or something of that nature, then people could gather on the various pathways, bring their blankets, go up on the hillside, be looking west towards the mountains, and I think it would just be an ideal setting for sort of that amphitheater bowl. So hopefully I'm providing a fairly good description of that. So.
Good. Thank you. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I just wanted to give kudos to the natural amphitheater and the solution to the baseball. Entirely to Drew. That was his suggestion at one of our final meetings, and yeah, anyway, it's such a neat and unique feature, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, it was understating it, but you know, Drew's a pretty good planner. So thank you.
Well, I'll give a movie quote, build it and they will come.
Right?
So.
Well, you just stole what I was going to talk about, and I was like, where's the cornfields? Because Major League Baseball just did a pretty cool thing with the Field of Dreams, and I'm not endorsing Major League Baseball or anything they're doing. It just, I thought that was pretty cool, and I think this is similar. Build it and they will come. It's cheesy to say and cliche, but I really think it's appropriate in this setting, and you guys have done a great job. I really love the multi-use aspect of it. I mean, that's something that we strive for in everything we do, and try and make it fit as many people as possible. I love the concept. I love the use of the topography, the connection points, and I think everything that everybody said around the table tonight has been great and good questions. Two things that I keep getting asked about is a skate park. And I think the answer to that is, A, we can't accommodate everything in one quarter section. And B, it ties into my second question, that's about access. So access to the quarter section is, and I see arrows down and connections of trails to Heritage Hills, but it's fairly remote in regards to other parts of the community.
Correct.
Is the intent to have transit and ideally just, you know, cyclists, I guess, could bike there, but it's mainly a drive to this site and recreate? Is that the plan? I mean, so that...
I think initially, if we look at this, we would say that a significant proportion of people would be driving, but we want to distribute that. So through cycling, walking, and through transit. So really a multimodal approach. That's why we have the transit plaza. We do have the connections into Heritage Hills. We've got the Horse Creek Crossing, so people from along the river could come and get to this space fairly quickly. But again, it's some of the topography will prevent some people from riding their bikes and things as well.
Yeah, well, and again, you can't, it is where it is. It's just I do get the question about access to Sunset, our largest community, getting across the highway, some of those things, like in the and I know we're not at that level, but those are things I'm hearing we'll have to address somewhere down the line. But I would be remiss, there's probably 300 or 400 grade 6 kids and in that area that have asked me about a skate park in the last 4 years, and if I didn't ask the question if there's a skate park going there, then they're all going to beat me up after school. So was that part of the discussion?
We did have a brief discussion about it. I think there would be an opportunity perhaps to consider it again. These concepts can evolve. I would share with council, I did have the benefit of going to the North Glenmore pump track. If anybody's in Calgary to actually see that, it's quite impressive. There's kids skateboarding in it, they're biking. So again, there's all sorts of different opportunities of how this could evolve over time.
So they can keep talking.
Yes, they can be quite excited and, keep that conversation going.
Last question, and you may have answered it in your implementation strategy there, but the stripping and grading and servicing, is that
Yeah,
next year?
We intended 2023. That was in the,
Okay.
the budget. Again, one of the things that I did want to share is we're still trying to finalize the purchase
Yeah.
of this from Rocky View Schools. So we're anticipating that by the end of the year. And then that next year, that's where they're doing some of the servicing and having all of that in position. So some of the stripping and grading could occur in 2023, which really ties into the phasing from our perspective as well.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on the timeline, so we're not telling people there's going to be something happening next year. I think everybody is clear about that. It's a multi-year phased approach to this
And
plan.
I share that, Mr. Mayor. I think this was one of the things why we wanted to be very careful in terms of the presentation tonight, because I know this has been shared out in the community and was in the paper, and then expectation is very high, but there is additional work that's required, so I wanted to make that very clear tonight.
Yeah, I think you've done a good job of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody put the motion on the floor. Councillor McFadden, thank you. I don't see any other questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you, Mr. Heinman. Keep pushing on here. Multi-purpose turf field. Okay, this is from the delegation earlier. Mr. CAO.
Thank you. Back for more here. I appreciate the clarity of our delegation before, so I'll just defer to council for any questions and for their discussion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reid?
I would move option one. I'm in support of this. I think this is seed money that's necessary and needed. Having done some fund development myself, having actually a very similar challenge of a donator who couldn't understand why, in our case it was 1.5 million, couldn't give it away or couldn't deal with it because of some challenges we were having with the Alberta education. This makes good sense to me. I would hate for council to punt this off to another council or let it die. I think this is, this is just a letter of confirmation. There's no guarantee. And I think it'll get them where they need to be in terms of being able to keep this moving forward. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Nagel?
I will start my comments with a question. Can someone please confirm for me when the first time is that we were in contact with Cochrane Track and Field Association about this project?
I certainly thank you, Councillor Nagel, through the chair. I couldn't confirm that with any confidence. I know that there's been a number of interactions. The mayor has been approached directly and asked about it quite early in my time here. I would say as at least February-ish would be my guess. Was the first time that it entered into our consciousness, or at least my consciousness administratively. And then obviously I think we've even seen it kind of evolve in terms of what they were, the dialogue and what they were asking us for. I would defer to the mayor if you can add further clarity to that.
Yeah, I think you're correct. They were here as a delegation, I believe, in May. And that was what I was alluding to in their presentation today, but I believe when Mr. Knitter outlined that this was a 3-year project that the donor had been working on, he was referencing, and Mr. Polhill, the principal of Cochrane High, approached me with this prior to COVID. And then he left that position, COVID happened, and then here we are now. So I believe that's a loose timeline of what's happened.
Yeah, and the reason I want to bring that up is just because I felt that the message coming from the presentation was that we've been dragging our heels on this for 3 years, when I don't feel that that's gone on. When we had the delegation in the spring or summer, final word, I remember it very clearly, they said, we will probably want more help from council and the town of Cochrane, and when we do, we'll be in touch. And I was waiting. And then they came back weeks before the election, and now all of a sudden there's alarm bells going off, that this donor is gonna pull their $1.2 million donation if we don't approve this immediately. And for me, like, I'm gonna call the bluff. Like, I don't think that's true. I think that the donor will probably still be interested in doing this 5 weeks from now with the next council, and I'm willing to take that risk because I just don't feel right about committing $600,000 of a future council's budget when I know that that's enough money to have a significant impact on next year's taxes. But to be clear, I think this is a great project. I think this is a great stopgap. That Horse Creek Park and all that sports field is a significant and amazing, like, 5 to 10 year vision, but that's not gonna happen anytime soon. And this would be a really good way to help those sports groups soon. But I don't buy the urgency, and I think for me it is an ethical question or an ethical problem that I am not going to get behind is spending the next council's money on my way out the door. It is something that I have seen proposed in the last 2 elections, and I did not like it either time. There was a major vote to spend money regarding transit on the eve of the last election, and 4 years before that there was a contract signed with a consultant for the wave pool, and I didn't like it then either. So I won't be supporting this evening, but if I happen to be lucky enough to be back here in the future, I would certainly look to support it in the budget.
Just to clarify, Councillor Nagel, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I believe did you put the recommended action on the table? So that is asking this to be considered in the next budget, not to spend the money today and write a check. It's doing exactly what you're asking, to pass this to the next council, to insert in the deliberations of the budget, and for that council to consider as a whole.
Right, okay. Well, I support the motion on the floor, but I was under the, what I do not support is a letter of, yes, we're gonna give you $600,000. But I do 100% support it for consideration in the budget. So I support the motion.
Okay, so we're clear on the, yeah, okay. Councillor Pacheco.
I think that's where I was kind of lost too, because I thought when I had asked that earlier question that we're just basically stating that, yes, we support it, but it's just a letter of support, right? Where then it felt like we were actually making a decision tonight about the $600,000. So now it's just a letter of support. That's it.
It's a letter of commitment and ask administration to include the $600,000 in the budget for deliberation by the next council.
Okay, because yes, I agree with Councillor Nagel. I love the plan, but I am not for running out to, you know, say, yes, we're just going to give you this money, especially when there are a lot of other key partners that have to come to the table here, and we're only the first part, right? So, and also just the very direct messaging, and I get that you have to be direct, but there were some comments made just about like timelines and things that we can't possibly guarantee that this is going to start in June of 2022, or that donor is going to pull their money. Like, it's just some very odd things that were said that make me suspicious as to the why, right? And the urgency of right now, commit to it or they're gone, right? And the project's just dead. I didn't like that wording, and so, but I do support the project, and I did want to give them kudos, because this is something I didn't mention earlier, that they did go back out to the community and do more engagement, and I'm thankful for that, because initially this wasn't an overly well-supported idea, right? And they really listened to the community and changed their plans, and that's I'm thankful for that, because obviously more groups need to do that rather than just taking their plan and forcing it ahead, and then we have to deal with it. So that's good. I'll support the letter, but yeah, I don't support necessarily giving the money until we know where everybody else is sitting with this as well.
Okay. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go offside on this. To me, a letter of commitment is something that they're theoretically going to want to be able to take to the bank. They want to go say to Rocky View County, Cochrane's in for $600,000. So a letter of commitment is either binding a future council in the budget process, or it's providing false security to the group, right? So I hope it's clear how much I support recreation in Cochrane, but yeah, I can't support a letter of commitment that binds council's budget decisions. And I think we should discuss this in the budget, and I agree with Councillor Nagel. And I certainly hope the funder can understand that there is a process that we need to go through. Also from a public engagement lens, I understand the group has reached out to the neighborhood, but for a lot of people, this meeting will be the next time they're publicly aware of it again. And so I think just from even a public engagement standpoint, which I've always championed, I think the public needs some time to think on this context, even though it's changed, and I think it's improved and should encourage people's neighbors' comfort levels with the project. But I think we need a little bit of time for public engagement. I'm just not comfortable with the letter of commitment. And then once it gets to the budget, I think it's also clear, I want to champion the advancement of the Horse Creek Sports Park as much as possible. And $600,000 is a lot of money, whether it's for a tax rate or for a project. I mean, if $600,000 could start a parking lot and some cycling on the Horse Creek Sports Park, or even a beginning phase, I just need to understand the financial implications on municipal recreation of $600,000. I'm certainly open to the conversation, but that $600,000 of municipal taxpayer dollars we wouldn't be spending on municipal recreational projects. So, I mean, I get it, they have a passion, I met with them as well, and I get the frustration of, you want to make things happen quick, and anybody who's been around for 4+ years in council knows that doesn't happen. But it's the fettering of council's decision-making that I can't get comfortable with, and I need to understand the impacts on the municipal budget of committing $600,000. So I support the conversation and to find what we can reasonably do, but I'd like to see it confirmed, what Rocky County is prepared to do. We should probably have a conversation with them, confirm where, like, I know in principle the school board supports it, but I'd like to see where that comes out. I'd like to hear more from the community. It's a big decision and a lot of money, and I think it needs due diligence.
Just for clarity, Mr. Darracott, the motion as Councillor Reid has put on the floor, the letter of commitment is not binding the next council. It is a letter of support for the project, and then asking administration to include this in the deliberation of the budget.
Yes, thank you. The letter would, I think, be drafted to reflect as best as possible the intentions of council, and to me the motion as read is that there is a level of support for the intent of the project and a commitment to consider that in the budgetary process for 2022. That's a subtle difference, but I hope that kind of clarifies the...
But we're not doing both, we're not binding, and...
I certainly, I would just say, first of all, that this council does not have the ability to bind future council, or is very, very limited in terms of how that goes. My understanding, this is going back to the previous presentation as well, is it's the commitment that is more key now, not the funding, and so they're very comfortable that the funding can come later on in the 2022 process, and so I just wanted to offer that again for a piece of information.
Okay, just wanted to be clear. Councillor Flowers.
I too think it's a really great project, and I'd like to see it proceed if there's a way that we can write the letter that doesn't commit us to the funding. I can only imagine the hours that they put in on the side of their desks trying to make this happen, and the frustration when you apply for these big grants and they all get turned down because you don't have the commitment of your local community. So I'm all in favor if we can find a way to word it that we're not binded.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can pull the motion up on the screen so the rest of council can actually see what we're talking about, because it seems to be some confusion.
This is the motion.
Yeah.
Currently, can maybe see if we can find
the motion actually reads that it's a letter of commitment to the project, right? It's not asking for the $600,000, and some people seem to be confused about that, and that the administration would consider that as part of the budget. So there are two separate issues here. Well, if you look at the last word, consideration, right? So it's not, there's no commitment to anybody from this council or even the next. It's just a consideration that would be part of that budget discussion. And the letter of commitment is separate. They're two separate things. That's why the word "and" is in between. So I'm not sure if all of my council colleagues are understanding that correctly. And maybe I've got it wrong, Mike.
No, thank you. If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to. I do think that this motion was specifically drafted with the intent of doing what we felt was appropriate for the town of Cochrane to keep this project moving forward without, I think, encumbering the future council with that decision. We do feel it is most appropriate to ensure that that budgetary consideration is considered in the full view of the other budgetary pressures, recreation or otherwise, that will be in front of council in the future. All of that being said, I don't think that precludes this council from saying, we really like this, we understand it, we see it, and we're committed to continuing this conversation as part of it. I also would leave it to them to do the work to decide whether or not that can satisfy their requirements to keep this project moving forward or not. The thing that I would suggest that this council consider is what is the right thing to do on behalf of the town of Cochrane organization, and go as far as you feel you can comfortably go there, and then that the rest is for this other organization to determine whether or not it satisfies their needs.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Councillor Nagel?
So, speaking to the motion on the floor, like, in order for me to support it, the words letter of commitment need to come out of the motion. And the reason that there's some confusion for myself, I think, is because the group that was speaking here a few hours ago, I don't think they were just here for like a symbolic thumbs up. Like I was getting the sense they wanted us to promise them $600,000. And that's what I really felt. So I could support just the consideration of $600,000 by the next council, but I can't support the motion with the words letter of commitment, because that sounds to me like a promise, which, as you've mentioned, we can't even do.
Yeah, I would suggest that for consideration that a letter of support may be based on the conversation I'm hearing council undertake. And it really depends for me what you're committing to. You can write a letter of commitment that doesn't commit council to, like, you can commit to the process of considering it in the budget, which is, it's not I wouldn't take that to the bank, so to speak, but it is a clear indication that this conversation is alive and well at the town of Cochrane and that there is intention there. And so I think it's more important to understand what you would be committing to rather, again, with the microphone there, sorry. If that makes sense, I think it's more important to understand what the commitment is than whether or not that word would be in there. I would suggest in preliminary conversations with the mayor, I just suggested as well is like, I think we just need to be really clear. Are they asking for the money committed to right now, or are they asking for commitment to the process that would lead to the money? After hearing the conversation tonight and some of council's deliberation, I think my perspective remains the same, is that council needs to determine what they're willing to do, and then it's for the group to decide whether or not that's enough to satisfy their needs moving forward.
Yeah, and maybe I can add some additional clarity. I've met with that group 4 times now, and they shifted from their original ask. It was and you're right, Councillor Nagel, they were asking for our support earlier, and we gave it. And they were asking for potentially $250,000, and it was for a track, and there was a bunch of things. They did their public engagement. It came back with a little bit of a different feel to it. They changed the scope of the project. They took and it was, I think it was a $4.8 million project before. It's 2.4 now. The commitment from the donor has been the same, the 1.2. I met with that individual with them. He shared the same sentiment. He would just like this to happen. Why is it so difficult for us to accept his money and build this facility? And I was saying, well, hold on. We didn't know that this was going to be a town facility. It's, well, not a town-owned facility, but a town open to the community facility. We thought it was a school facility, and my pushback at that was, why are we contributing to a Rocky View School Division project? And he said, well, that's not at all the intent. It's to build a facility for the entire community on school property. They'll maintain it, they'll build it. So from my point of view, I think I hear what you're saying. We don't want to bind, and we can't bind the next council, but let's talk about what the letter of commitment, is it a letter of support? What is we talking about? I made it clear to them as well that I didn't feel comfortable personally. I said, I'm sure council can have their own opinion on this, but I didn't feel comfortable having them come and ask for $600,000 prior to an election, all the timing, and they were clear that all they needed was us to be supportive of the project. And that we would consider it in the budget. And that's a commitment for them to move forward in their eyes, to go to Rocky County, to get potential other donors, where they're all coming back to them saying, well, is the town in? And they've got nothing. So that's what they're asking for, is really letter of support, and that we will be committed to, the next council will be committed to looking at it in the budget. So again, from my point of view, I think we should allow it to continue down the road to the next council, at least, and my perspective on that is the next council will be looking at the budget as a whole. I agree, $600,000 is a lot of money, but on the other hand, to your point, Councillor Nagel, I mean, we're not going to be progressing any of these Horse Creek Sports Park dreams in the next 3 to 5 years, well, 3 years, I'll say. This would be an opportunity to maybe leap ahead with something for 25-cent dollars. If the commitment from Rocky View County is the same and we have a donor paying for half. So things that I would like boxes to be checked on is that access agreement I talked about. I think these are all details that need to come later on if the next council says yes to the money. But if they don't get the commitment tonight to go to the next level, then it's dead in its tracks. So I don't know why we wouldn't at least allow it to move ahead to the next council for discussion. That's kind of where I'm at. And it's not committing anything. It's just continuing the conversation. If we don't, then we don't have a conversation to continue, and the risk, whether it's real or not, that individual shared that same sentiment with me, and I have to take them on their word. And if someone in our community wants to write a check for $1.2 million to provide a facility for our community, I think we need to take a look at it. So that's my 2 cents. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I think Councillor Nagel and I remain on the same page. If you wanted to amend it to provide a letter of support, I could get behind a letter of support. But what I heard tonight very clearly was they wanted a commitment, a letter they could take to the bank and cash after the budget process. They wanted something that they could use as leverage. And I don't think we're at a point where we can guarantee that leverage. So I think it's a great project, and I'm certainly open to finding a way to invest and making more playing fields happen. But it has to be done right, and it has to be done in the right timing, and it has to be done with like full informed choices. Because $600,000 is a lot of money. We don't, in any budget process we've ever been, we've never ever spent that easily and quick. And there's a lot of recreation, a lot of community services, generally speaking, that $600,000 would mean a lot to. And we've talked about some of them tonight. So, yeah, so if we want to amend it to provide a letter of support, I could get behind that. But if it remains to be a letter of commitment tied to there, I cannot.
Okay, we're narrowing down the scope. Councillor Federico.
I kind of think, like what Mr. Jericho was saying is that, you know, you can write in the letter that, you know, this project has our support, but really it is up to that next council to consider the $600,000 as part of that budget process. And he is right in that that should be good enough, because really at the end of the day, then we're not deciding anything tonight, but that group, if the deal falls apart because the deal falls apart, then that's really not up to us to worry about anyways. We've provided our support. We said, yes, we support it, but it just needs to be very clear in that letter that this is not guaranteeing any sort of funds coming forward within this budget process. That will be up for debate in budget deliberations. And I think if you can make that clear, then I agree. Why would we stop it and stall it? Just, I think it has to be worded in that right way to make sure that it's very well laid out, that we're not paying anything right now.
Councillor Reid.
Yeah, back to me. Again, you know, I was trying to deal with what the recommendation was in terms of the form of the motion. I don't know why we seem to get hung up that we were, you know, there's a commitment to spend $600,000. The motion clearly says administration that would be considered as part of the budget process. That's all I was trying to say in terms of, in support of this. If the letter of support is of more comfort to everybody, then I'm happy to see that as a friendly amendment. I don't know that, Mike, I don't know, you know, in terms of letter of commitment, I kind of heard what you were saying. It sounds, the definition you were using was sounds letter of support sounds similar. Either way, I just like to be able to say that, you know, we see this as a valuable opportunity for our community. The mayor is right, it's 25 cents on a dollar, like, you know, that the next council can consider in terms of budgetary consideration. Again, I don't want to get into merits about, you know, what $600 can be spent, $600,000 can be spent here or there. That's not the question here tonight.
Yeah.
The question is are we comfortable with asking administration to include that as part of the budget for next council to consider? Full stop.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. Councillor Wilson?
Just thought I'd pile on with the, I like how you phrase the 25-cent dollar, whenever there's an opportunity to put a 25-cent dollar community project on the board that has no life cycling obligation. It's pretty slam dunk for me. I like how it's written right in the recommended action. I think that's clear enough, and I don't know if there's an action or if there's a motion on the table, but I would be fine with that exact wording that we see in front of us there. I think that's pretty clear that we're committing to having that amount on the budget, the 2022 budget deliberation schedule, and that's just as it reads. I'm entirely comfortable with that. So I don't know if that helps. Do we have a motion on the floor?
That is the motion on the floor,
Okay.
unless Councillor Reid amended it friendly. Not yet?
So that mouthful is just, I'm in support of the motion on the floor then.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else? Councillor Nagel?
Yeah, could I get some clarification? Are we using a letter of commitment or a letter of support? Because it does matter to me.
Councillor Reid, it's your motion.
I wrote one with a letter of commitment, but to get this through tonight, I'm prepared to consider the letter of support. If that's more palatable to my proposal.
Far more palatable, because I'm not going to commit the next council to anything.
Councillor Flowers?
After hearing the discussion, I'd be more comfortable with letter of support as well.
Okay, Councillor Reid, is that your direction?
It looks like it's going to happen that way.
Okay, so the motion now will read that, except letter of support, in support of the multipurpose turf
How about,
field.
we would also delete the in support of, so we, you know, use some good grammar. Provide a letter of support for the multi-purpose
I was trying to
purpose
make it
turf
simple.
field project.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's clear. Okay. Yes. Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Now we need a motion to go past 10 since it's 10:01. Thank you, Councillor Flowers. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, what's next?
Thank you. I think we are prepared to go in camera. May I suggest again, just in maybe another brief bio
yes,
break?
okay.
But I don't know if council prefers to have the motion to go camera
Oh, no,
and then a
no,
brief
no,
break.
no,
or-
no, no, no. We have our reports.
Oh, I apologize.
to do.
Yeah, you
Don't
can tell
try and skip
how much I've
through.
been looking forward to those.
Wow, yeah.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm trying to catch up to you.
I'm just going to sit down and get away from this microphone.
Okay. Thank you. Wow, there's, yeah, reports. Okay, mayor's report. I'll keep it to 2 minutes. Thank you. And a proclamation. Let me do that first before I was going to forget again. Okay. Proclamation of the International Day of the Girl for October 11th, 2021. And the Girl Guides have requested that Cochrane proclaim October 11th as the International Day of the Girl. It is a day to honor girls and promote their empowerment and human rights. When girls have access to all these things, they have the potential to change their own lives, the lives of their families and communities and beyond. When we invest in girls today, we invest in future entrepreneurs, mentors, political leaders, mothers, activists, and innovators. Therefore, the town of Cochrane proclaims October 11th as International Day of the Girl. That was a good one. Okay, thank you, Councillor Reid, for the reminder. I totally would have forgotten that. Short mayor's report tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the summer. I enjoyed the plethora of community events that went on. They are too many to list. I'm not going to go through all of them. If anything that COVID has provided me an opportunity to do is to really appreciate the people in our community that put on those events, the people that go to those events, and just the value in all of those events, the camaraderie, the connections, all of those things. Having it taken away from you with COVID just made it that much more special this year. So thank you to the community for doing all of that. A couple of items that I will update on. Doctor shortages, we've talked about that. I just want to give you a brief update that Kristen and, Ms. Hubrecht and Mr. Derricott and I have been working on this behind the scenes. We met with some higher ups in AHS. We got a report back from them on, to be honest, they were quite shocked. We were approaching them on this issue. They were not aware that there was, they said, Cochrane. I mean, we're ready to hear this in other communities, in more rural and remote communities, but in Cochrane, we weren't really expecting this. So we shared all of the things that we've been hearing, the closure of our PCN potentially at the end of the year, the doctors leaving, etc. And they agreed that this is something we should be working on. They shared some of the stats for our community. It actually didn't look terrible. We measure up in the average of doc to pop now. We were doing cop to pop. Now we're doctors to resident population. Cochrane's right in the middle there, but they also shared that their data is 90 days at a time that the doctors have to report and bill, and that's how they track it. So they could tell us how many doctors were active in Cochrane, how many were billing in Cochrane, all of that. So again, it's a fact-finding mission that we're still on. Ms. Hubrecht created a survey that she distributed to all of our family physicians in Cochrane to ask them about why they chose Cochrane, if they're still here, why are they still here, garnering some of their feedback on how we can best engage if we choose to, what the community can do, and I think we're slowly circling closer and tighter in on maybe a marketing strategy, and this is something the AHS individuals shared with us as well, that communities in the past that were struggling with physicians would approach, say, the UFC medical program and talk directly to those students like we do for job fairs already and try to attract people and jobs in our community, that we can focus our efforts on the medical industry and try and attract some of those doctors. That's another conversation for the next council to have, but I just wanted to share that the news isn't maybe as dire as what we hear, which is generally how issues come through a community. We hear and we hear noise, and it's not that it's not important, but it's maybe not as quite as dire as what we're hearing. But then on the other side, maybe AHS doesn't have all the facts just yet because they're trying to catch up. So it's somewhere in the middle of that. And I do think we have work to do as a community where we can market to those UFC or U of A grads and keep Albertans working in Alberta. And I won't get into all the political stuff around medical, and this is really not our jurisdiction to be in at all, but attracting types of business is, and that's something we can do and that we already do well, so why not focus our efforts on that. Last thing I'll say is that they did say that they had, I believe it was 6 openings that they had posted. I'm looking at Kristen, she can nod, and they've filled 3. So they've, and I took that to mean that there are 3 doctors coming to Cochrane that haven't yet landed here, so help is on the way. And they're looking to fill 3 more. So the system is working. It just may not be working as fast as we have lost doctors in the past, and that, again, I've called that the perfect storm, where we've had some just leave because they chose to relocate, some retired, and the other issues, and then you package that all together, and that's why we're in the position we're in. So the next council will have some of that to deal with. Was that a good round? Got that in a package? Okay. Next thing is work continues on the 1A22 discussions with the province. We have a minister meeting on September 20th, and like the last day possible to meet with anybody that will care about this council. The Minister of Transportation, Minister Sawney, we have 2 meetings with her that day actually. One with her privately as our organization, and then one with Melcor and the Sunset Ridge developer to try and move along Gap 2 to try and get the 1A project extended up Gap 2 like we've been talking about for 2 years, to have that second access open for Sunset Ridge. So Mr. Derricott and Mr. Heineman have been working on that, and Ms. Hubricht on all of the things we need to do and say and try and get that piece, that I think it's 800 meters, included in the tender is our goal on the 20th, so that at least it's tendered and we know the real costs of it, and then we have I think a really great plan on how we can help the province pay for that with a partnership with the developer, and get that important little link included in that project. So just a brief update on that. So with that said, I just wanted to say, as this is our last meeting, I have truly appreciated working with each of you around the council table and senior team. The same. I've enjoyed building and working with the relationships that we've all created with one another. It's been truly my honor to serve as mayor with this group. I've enjoyed the journey that we've been on together, and I wish you all the success in the coming weeks, and we'll see what happens in the future. But it really has been an interesting experience, and one I will always cherish. And the work that goes on behind the scenes that no one knows or actually really cares about, but just happens on a daily basis, is remarkable. And the people that make it happen are just as remarkable. So thank you for all your efforts that you do for the town of Cochrane as an employee and as elected officials. Thank you. Councillor Nagel, you have a report?
Yeah, just very similar to your closing remarks there. Just wanted to recognize that this is our last meeting together. I want to thank everyone for their work and their service, everybody on council as well as administration. It's, I don't know, I don't really know what to say. It's very hard to believe. I've been here for 8 years. Yet the 4 years in our term has gone by so quickly. I don't think any of us expected that the biggest issue we were going to deal with was COVID. We have been in government in probably the strangest political time of our entire lives. We're going to tell our grandkids about this one day, and I don't know, but it's been quite the experience. And I think we've got a lot to be proud of everything we've been able to achieve. And I personally feel that we've done a great job working together as a group. Every once in a while we get into little debates and things go back and forth, but that is to be expected when you're debating things that are high stakes and the millions of dollars, something you're all very passionate about. And I think at the end of the day, we've always done a really good job in a group dynamic. And I guess I'd like to thank our chair, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership in that role. But anyways, sayonara, I guess.
Councillor Wilson.
Just quickly wanted to express my appreciation too. I know I got really lucky with who I got elected with. It doesn't always go this way, but a great group, individual people are on the table, and our senior management team too. I'm really appreciative for just it was very fortuitous. I know that I got lucky in the last election, and thanks for being here with me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor McFadden?
Well, I just feel like we're all trying to cry or something. It's terrible. Yeah, anyhow, I just wanted to extend that. It's been, when you step up, and everybody ran last time and you had visions for what we were going to accomplish in 4 years. Nobody was envisioning we'd go through a significant recession and a pandemic and have to govern through more crises than I've seen. So, kudos to the council bench. I think everybody worked well, diverse groups, And again, if you're not disagreeing, then somebody's not thinking. So I think we did a good job. I'm very proud to have worked with everybody. I think amazing things have been accomplished this term, which, so it's been great working with this group. And of course, on this side of the bench, we can create as many brilliant motions and decisions as we want, but without the proper team to implement it, it really doesn't matter. So thank you, everyone, to you and to all of your teams that have supported our organization. And I think from the residents' point of view over the last 4 years, things have happened really well, and maybe not been aware of the amount of stress that you've all carried to continue to provide the level of services our residents expect and have received in really difficult times. So I'm so proud of all of you and so glad to have had the opportunity to work with you. And hopefully this meeting is like just so long, not farewell.
I'd like to share I had a full head of hair, I think, when we started this term. Okay. Okay, no other reports? Last call? Okay. We need a motion to go in camera, I believe. It's our last item on the agenda. Councillor Reid, all those in favor? That carries, thank you. We'll maybe take a 5-minute IT break here.